Okay, good afternoon, folks. Welcome to the Planning and Land Use Committee. Let's get us started. Call the roll, please.
Yes, sir. Mr. Blumenfield.
Blumenfield, present.
Ms. Hutt. Absent. Mr. Nazarian. Absent. Mr. Lee.
Present.
Ms. Rahman. Here. That's 3 members and a quorum, sir.
Okay, great. We have a quorum. We're going to start this meeting by taking public comment on agenda items, and then we're going to do general public comment at the end of the meeting after we have completed all items. And just so folks know how I'd like to do this here, we're going to go item by item. So if you're here to speak on a particular item or 2 particular items, we will hear your testimony when we get to that item. We're going to start, however, with folks who have signed up for more than 3 or more items. Generally, people who want to hear their own voice, they're not really interested in the items. It's a clown show. We're going to get them going up at the beginning and try to get rid of that, and then we'll deal with folks who are serious about the issues, and we'll take it on a one-by-one basis. So, Mr. Rosales, could you read the instructions?
Yes, the clerk reads those, Mr. Blumenfield.
Okay.
Appellants and other representatives and applicants and other representatives will be allowed to speak for a total of 3 minutes per side unless otherwise noted by the chair. Members of the public wishing to speak on one agenda item only shall have an opportunity to speak for 1 minute. Appellants and applicants will be given an opportunity to speak when their item is called. Each appellant and applicant has a total of 3 minutes to speak. An appellant can choose to have a single representative speak on his or her behalf or divide the 3 minutes among his or her team. Anyone else, including an attorney or project manager wishing to speak on an appellant's behalf who does not do so during this 3-minute period, may offer a minute of public comment whenever the committee chairperson opens the public comment period for the meeting, which is usually at the beginning of the meeting. Therefore, we expect that appellants and applicants have their respective teams assembled and ready to present at the appropriate times today. Members of the public wishing to speak on more than one item shall state that and shall be allowed to speak for a total of 2 minutes. Failure to submit public comment in a timely manner before the comment period for the item ends results in forfeiture of the opportunity to participate in public comment for the item. As stated by the chair, general public comment will be taken at the end of the meeting. Mr. Chair, if I may, for the record, a community impact statement has been submitted for item number 1 by the Greater Wilshire Neighborhood Council in support of the matter, and a community impact statement has been submitted for item number 7 by the Historic Cultural Neighborhood Council against the matter.
Great, thank you. And we will hear those community impact statements as we get to each of those items, and as always, we will give extra time for a community impact statement. So we'll start with, again, with general public comment for folks, not general, I'm sorry, make it clear, for comment on the items for folks who wish to speak to 3 or more items. So it's sort of our regulars. So if we could start, if you are one of those folks, and you all know who you are because you come to every meeting, go ahead and line up on the left side, house left, stage right, and come to the microphone, and we'll state which of the bogus names that you've signed up under are you using today, which I will not read because they're generally offensive. Go ahead, sir. You have 2 minutes to entertain us.
First of all, I am a woman. I told you so many times.
Sorry,
that I do not
Chair,
appreciate
excuse me,
that.
sorry.
Sorry, sir. Stop. Go ahead.
Do you want to take modifications to the projects before public comment? There are at least 2 projects that have modifications.
Okay, if we could do that. Thank you.
Sorry, thank you.
No worries. Please announce those.
I think we need staff to come up.
No, go ahead and sit down for a minute, will you?
I think there's some planning staff.
We'll get back to you in a second. Sorry if I sound like I'm being rude to him, but he generally disrupts this meeting. Go ahead, sit down for a second. We need to make sure that we do the modifications to the meeting,
Yes.
to the items that we announced those before public comment. So which items are those?
I believe it's item 4, Mr. Chair, and item 7, and the planning department is present, and we'll speak to those.
Okay. Planning department, if you could speak to those items, and again, we will take those up more substantively when we get to the item, but to make sure that the public is aware of them before anyone speaks. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is Griselda Gonzalez with the Planning Department. So for item number 4 on the agenda, Council File number 24-1484, staff would like to make the following technical correction. The floor area ratio listed on the agenda should be changed to show a floor area ratio FAR of 5.5021 for the residential uses and 2.9921 for the hotel, instead of the floor area of 5.5021 for the hotel and 2.9921 for the residential uses. And that would be the only change.
Okay. And for the other item, did you do both, Justin?
The other item, Mr. Blumenfield, is the motion Park Nassarian, and I believe council office has some language. I think it's CD1.
For which one, 7 you said?
For item 7, sir.
Okay.
Hi, good afternoon. Helen Campbell, Planning Director for Councilmember Hernandez. We just wanted to submit a comment for the record. We strongly urge this body to consider requesting a report back instead of directing DCP to draft an ordinance that would remove all zoning regulations to expedite Olympic-related development and infrastructure that is both temporary and permanent. We need to first understand the universe of projects that would be expedited under such a provision and the unintended short and long-term consequences upon our communities that this might impose. We'd also like clarity on how a project may potentially be reclassified as an Olympics-related project that is seeking to bypass regulations meant to safeguard communities.
Okay, thank you. No, and a comment like that we could have easily heard during when we actually took up the item. You said there was a substantive change that needed to be announced?
That's the letter that I had received from CD1, so I didn't read the letter in its entirety, so that will...
Okay, no worries,
right.
no
Yeah.
worries. But, I mean, we can make substantive changes as we go through this, because this is not the final step that goes to council. So we're not under the same requirement as council is in terms of the announcement. But that's, glad that we took that extra precaution. We can now return to comment for folks who wish to speak to 3 or more items. Go ahead, sir. And sorry about pulling you off. If you could announce which name you signed up under, and then you'll have 2 minutes to speak to the items.
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Blumenfield.
I'm sorry, one more second.
Sir, 1 minute.
One more second, sir. If you could hold for 1 second. Go ahead, sir.
Mr. Blumenfield, out of an abundance of caution, for item 7, there are technical amendments. Do you want to do those prior to public comment and read them beforehand?
If the city attorney thinks we need to, then we will. I don't think we need to, but do you believe we need to read those in?
Yeah, we should read those so the public can comment on those changes.
Okay.
Yeah,
We
COA
can
read
figure that
those.
out later, but why don't you go ahead and read those in?
Sure. Oh, thank you. Okay, so I will read the language for the committee members. The motion by Ms. Park and Nassarian is being amended as follows. It reads, I therefore move that the Los Angeles City Council authorize and direct the City Planning Department in coordination with the City Attorney, the Department of Building and Safety, and this is the new language I will read, it's underlined, and the Department of Recreation and Parks, the City Administrative Officer, Office of Major Events, and other relevant departments, and again, new language, to prepare a report with recommendations, including budgetary fiscal impacts and an accompanying draft ordinance, end of the new language, to exempt Olympic and Paralympic temporary and permanent venues, training facilities, security perimeters, broadcast and media centers, transit infrastructure, live events, live sites, and fan zones and associated structures, new language, to denote 2028 games projects, end of the new language, from the requirements of the city planning approvals, zoning regulations, and conditions, and this is new language again, if applicable, end of the language, including but not limited to conditional use permits and conditions tied to such permits, site plan review requirements, height restriction, setback requirements, limitations imposed by specific plans, and any other planning or zoning regulations. And then again, new language, but not to exempt 2028 games projects from mobility improvements required under Measure HLA, Section 85.11 of Division Q of Chapter 8 of the Municipal Code, end of the language, that could delay or impede the rapid deployment and/or use of essential facilities. New language, with an option for the council to exclude specifically identify 2028 game projects from the ordinance. As to the second moving clause, there's an addition to identify the planning department, which was absent from the original sentence. And then the third moving clause includes reference to the 2028 games. And in addition, it includes a new sentence at the end of the existing clause that indicates, as I will read now, additionally, with the concurrence of the mayor, approve one exempt resolution authority, enterprise-funded position of Deputy Superintendent of Building 1 at the Department of Building and Safety to be used for this unit. End of the additional language. And in addition, this is a new language requested by CD 11 and CD 7 that reads, I further move that the above does not apply to Metro 28 by 28 transportation light rail projects, which will follow the established Master Cooperation Agreement, MCA, review process adopted by Metro and the city in 2023. That concludes the language, sir.
Great, thank you very much. And we can figure out later, again, I appreciate the abundance of caution, but I don't want to create a precedent that we have to read everything beforehand. So that being said, now is there any reason that we can't move to public comment? Hearing none, we will now move to public comment on the items for those folks that wish to speak to 3 or more items. Basically, the folks who come all the time and like to hear their own voice. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Madam President. First of all, if you continue to discriminate my gender, I will do the same thing to you, because respect is mutual both-way devices. Starting with item number 6. I understand that our Madam President said that I am the origin of COVID-19. I agree with our council member and then continue to say that it's because of me that we are having this COVID-19 local emergency.
Stick to the
so
items.
I want to express my, local emergency COVID-19, it is the item. So I want to express my apology to our council president. However, I'm just a person trying to survive, regardless what skin color I am, regardless what gender I am. I just really wish that our council president can stop referring me as a bogus, as a clown show, as a whatever big adjective name that you can come up with. Now let's move on to the next item. We can move on to the item number 4. It's about the housing, and one of the areas is including 4 affordable units in this one. Our council president invested more than 47 million to helping those Mexican and Palestinian refugee. But when it comes to Israel affordable housing, and then our council president is only giving 4 units. I don't know how many homeless people are living on the street. I don't know how many people are experiencing homeless issues in the city of LA. But I just feel 4 units, I don't know what can you accomplish with 4 units. At the same time, just because we are Israel, just because we are white, we are Caucasian, we are not able to receive any more services, and then I will continue to be a woman even though you continue to call me as a man.
Okay, ma'am, per your request. we'll hear the next public comment. Again, I'm sure this is going to be very enlightening. Go ahead.
It always is.
Can we call you sir?
I don't care what you call me.
Yeah,
Mike
okay, go ahead.
Greenspan,
2
I
minutes
signed up as my
per
real
item.
name. And let's first go to number 9, because remember, the late John Walsh always talked about we're the hit and run capital of the world. And here's another liquor place. They'll be serving liquor here. I guess, I mean, all you guys do in this town is get drunk. It's a Catholic town. They get drunk, they eat fish. Shame on you, Blumenfield, for helping the Goyim get drunk and get drunk and get drunk and hit and smash into other vehicles and run over pedestrians. Oh, that's okay. It's L.A. So it's my fault. You know, when Irish eyes are smiling, you know the liquor's pouring. Those of us who are sober, we're just dull and boring. Well, I'll be dull and boring, but not drunk and driving around and running over people in the hit-and-run capital of the world. Now, a couple of these other things. Oh, look at this, number 8. Oh, my God. In Council District 10, we don't have enough density. We really don't. I mean, people have talked about Manhattanizing up there in Frisco, and now we're Manhattanizing down here. And look at this thing. Oh, well, at least one good thing. We'll have 11% of the proposed density of the 163 dwelling units for extremely low income households. They used to always call it affordable. Of course, affordable for Magic Johnson, affordable for LeBron James, and affordable for us are two different terms. So once again, we're building, building, building. Now we've got another negative declaration, which means something's no good. Council District 13, we're going to build so many square feet. 40,000 square feet's not enough. We've got to have a couple 100,000 or more before everything's legitimate. It sucks a dick like this. Yeah, fuck you.
Wonderful. Next speaker who wishes to speak to more than 3 or more items. Go ahead. And which name did you sign up under so we can cross that one off?
Signed up as mynigga.org.
Wonderful.
That's
okay,
right.
start his time.
Now let's talk about getting fucked up in CD number 13 when we go to the bar. And Christina Carpenter is being played, and I'm dancing. You in the game, and you get, and you money chuck on. That's right. As you're singing, we're sticking the liquor down her throat, putting that booze in her belly, so that she can add her fentanyl to it later, and then the bitch will be under control. For further information, please see the United States of America versus P. Diddy for more information. That's right. And you motherfuckers want more rape. You want more date rape. You want more assaults of women. That's why you're voting for number 9. As a woman, you want more of your fellow women to feel the love of getting her ass kicked and left off of Mulholland Highway at 3 o'clock in the morning at number 9. And then CD 4, that is a noodle information. We will now play the noodle song. Noodle, 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 noodle. Let's see what that bitch is up to here. Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy with a whole bunch of shit. Look at that. I don't even know what the fuck this is on number 9. Do you, Bob? She's written a whole constitution of shit here. Are you gonna let this woman use you, Bob? Are you a simp, Bob? Are you attracted, Bob, by her feminine ways? She's going up to you and working you like that cappuccino song.
Stick to the items.
Cappuccino. Yes, that's right. While she's greasing the wheels and making millions of dollars for her campaign donors. Don't be a simp, Bob. Vote no on all this fucking bullshit.
All right. Clown car empty yet? Nope, one more. Go ahead, sir.
I have to return that to the FBI locker. Thank you so much. I'm sorry, I forgot.
Okay, what name or names did you sign up under?
Acronym BHWA, nigga. Boyle Heights with attitude, motherfucker.
All right, you've got 2
That's
minutes
right.
to address all the items.
Now we know we've got some more off-site consumption going on in CD 13. I'm here to deny this liquor license because we've become the hit and run capital of the world. We don't need more alcohol. We do not need more fentanyl on our streets, as I mentioned up at your Trade and Travel just less than 10 minutes ago. Because the goddamn fucking airports are blowing them in left and right, filling our communities up with the ghetto shit that Lee, one-time former staffer B, was in Vegas with an escort. But Lee ain't like you. We ain't gonna be like you. We are not like you. So fuck the 44 outdoor seats and your hours of operation. We want them to amend a time that is reasonable. You shut down at 10 o'clock and go your fucking ass home where you belong, nigga. So Nazarian, I keep telling you, we ain't like you, bro.
Stick to the items.
I just said it. We ain't like you. Let's go to the next item. How about number 10 in So in Noodle's little 5,000 square foot mansion bullshit, no one can live there. You look at this bullshit living quarter of what? 200 feet of public parkland? There's no such fucking shit like that. LA is a density city that no one wants to live. Look at all those empty fucking condos, all those expensive high retail apartments sitting vacant on Broadway. What the fuck is going on here? That's the reason why I say we ain't like you, Bob. Now to my non-agenda public comment.
Nope, your time is up. Yep. Goodbye. There will be time at the end of the meeting for general public comment if members of the clown car wish to come back after we've done all of the business. But now we're actually going to move to the items. We're going to start with item number 1. And if we could read that one into the record.
Yes, sir. Item 1 is a categorical exemption from CEQA and a report from the Cultural Heritage Commission to include the Clinton Manor Courtyard Apartments as a historic cultural monument.
Okay. And do we have a presentation from staff on this? Give us a very brief presentation on this one, please. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Chairman Blumenfield and members of the committee. I am Andres Parra. Good afternoon, Chairman Blumenfield and members of the committee. I am Andres Parra with City Planning's Office of Historic Resources. Before you today is the recommendation from the Cultural Heritage Commission to designate the Clinton Manor Courtyard Apartments in the Larchmont neighborhood as an historic cultural monument. Constructed in 1940, the subject property is a multifamily courtyard apartment complex built by the Aetna Construction Company and designed in the American Colonial Revival architectural style. The Cultural Heritage Commission found that the Clinton Manor Courtyard Apartments exemplifies significant contributions to the broad cultural, economic, or social history of the nation, state, city, or community as representative of early patterns of development of workforce multifamily housing in the greater Wilshire area, and it also embodies the distinctive characteristics of a style, type, period, or method of construction as an excellent example of a 1940s courtyard apartment complex. This concludes my report. Ken Bernstein and I from our office are available for any questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Next, we're going to hear public comment. Now, I believe you said at the beginning there was a community impact statement on this item, so I have four names before me, but whoever submitted the community impact statement, if you could come up and come forward. Okay, I don't see anybody coming up, so I'm going to go through the names. We have 4 speakers have signed up for this. Sam Uretsky, Laura Dominguez, Karen Gilman, and Lindsay Mulhaney. Each of you come on up. You'll each have 1 minute to speak, and if the person who brought the community impact statement, they would be given 2 minutes if they show up. So go ahead, please state your name, and we'd love to hear from you.
Hello, my name is Laura Dominguez. I'm a historian and resident of Clinton Manor and a co-author of the nomination, and I first just want to thank you for your consideration today on behalf of myself and my neighbors. This nomination was a labor of love. In my more than 15 years of working in historic preservation, I have rarely seen tenant-led efforts come together so quickly and with such commitment. This property is more than worthy of HCM designation. It was designed during the Great Depression to bring dignity and a healthy quality of life to working Angelenos. It is a testament to the innovative spirit and creativity of the city's residents. 85 years later, it continues to serve the same purpose. Our historic garden-style community is an example of the kinds of housing types the city ought to prioritize as it looks to its future, and we urge you to prioritize this usable past by voting to recommend designation to the full council. So on behalf of the Clinton Manor Coalition, I want to thank you very much for your support.
Great, thank you. And if you could go off to the other direction, and next speaker? Yeah, so when you exit house right, stage left. Go ahead, sir, if you could state your name, and you have 1 minute.
Yes, my name is Sam Uretsky. I'm the president of Larchmont United Neighborhood Association. I want to thank you for considering Clinton Manor as a historic cultural monument. It's a fine example of 1940s garden apartment complex, both architecturally and culturally significant. It's a model of how history teaches us we can build with architectural sensitivity, affordable housing, and integrated green space and gentle density. Our board voted unanimously in support of the Clinton Manor's application. We ask the committee to approve it and pass it along to the council for its approval. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you very much. Next speaker.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the Plum Committee. My name is Karen Gilman, and I'm a neighbor living 3 blocks away from the Clinton Manor Courtyard Apartments, and I'm the secretary of the Larchmont Village Neighbor Association, which has a letter on file, and I'm on the Land Use Committee of the Greater Wilshire Neighborhood Council, which has a letter on file, but I'm not the official CIS speaker. I'm here to support the Historical Cultural Monument application. I'd like to express my appreciation to the Cultural Heritage Commission and Office. We very much support and love this American Colonial Revival Courtyard Apartment Complex. We're pleased that it can maintain such lovely housing in an RSO kind of setting for these long-term tenants, and we love having it in our neighborhood. Thank you very much for considering this today.
Great, thank you very much. I believe we have one additional speaker. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Lindsay Mulcahy. I'm speaking on behalf of the Los Angeles Conservancy, and we're really enthusiastically supporting this nomination. Courtyard apartments like Clinton Manor are increasingly rare, but they're exactly the kind of housing we need to protect and to learn from. This resourceful complex balances privacy with density. Its generous open space fosters strong community connection. It's really vital to protect our historic RSO housing and to learn from the characteristics that make them so successful. The Clinton Manor Coalition, who nominated the building, is a resident-led coalition. It spans people who have lived in this apartment complex for decades to those who have recently arrived. And they're really committed both to the history of their building and its future, as well as their tenancies, and being able to keep it a strong community space. So we're really proud to support their efforts and ask that you do as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, it's going to be my intention to move approval of the inclusion, but if anyone has any comments or questions for staff, let me know. Seeing no comments or questions, let's call the roll.
Mr. Blumenfield.
Blumenfield, aye.
Ms. Hutt.
Aye.
Mr. Nassarian. Aye. Mr. Lee.
Mr. Lee.
Aye.
And Ms. Rahman.
Yes.
That's unanimous, 5 ayes.
Great, congratulations, that measure is approved. Okay, next is number 2, which is the Historic Cultural Monument, the Barn. And we do not have any public speakers on this item. Colleagues, I'd be happy to take this on consent and just move this forward unless anyone wants additional comments or questions. Seeing none, on item 2, let's open the roll to approve.
Yes. Mr. Blumenfield.
Blumenfield, aye.
Ms. Hutt.
Aye.
Mr. Nassarian.
Aye.
Mr. Lee.
Aye.
Ms. Rahman.
Yes.
5 ayes and unanimous, sir.
Okay, that measure is approved. The next item is zone change for 13, a 7-story storage building. We do have speakers on this item, so if we could start with a staff presentation.
Good afternoon. My name is Valentina Knox-Jones with the Department of City Planning. The project is located at 956 North Seward Street and various other addresses in the Hollywood Community Plan area in Council District 13. The project is the construction of a new 168,478 square foot storage building consisting of self-storage and temperature-controlled film and media storage. On December 11th, 2024, the City Planning Commission approved a conditional use permit and site plan review for the storage use. The waiver of dedication and improvements entitlement was dismissed without prejudice as modifications were incorporated in the T conditions. The CPC approved and recommended that the City Council approve a zone change and height district for the site. The zoning requested by the applicant is consistent with the zoning recommended by the Hollywood Community Plan update, which is effective today. No appeals were filed on the City Planning Commission action. The entitlements before you are the zone change and height district change. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Great, thank you. It's significant that no appeals have been put forward. I would recommend this one on consent, but we have some speakers, so I'm going to call up public comment speakers. We have Eric Farrar, Zach Straysters, Vito Basulta, Juan Delara, and Gus Torres. If you're here, if you could make your way to the left side, house left. And again, my intention is to move this forward as there's no appeals. It's a good project, so if folks could come forward. You have up to a minute. You don't need to use the entire minute. But welcome. You don't have to be in the order that I called you, but if those are the folks who signed up, so those are the people I called. Welcome. If you could state your name and go ahead, sir.
Hey, how you doing? Zach Strosters, Creed LA. We just want to say we overwhelmingly support this project. Please approve. Thanks and God bless you.
Great. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Eric Farr with Smart Local 105, and we support.
Thank you.
Gus Torres, Local 250, and we're all in support of this project too.
Thank you.
Hello. My name is Juan Delara, and I'm speaking on item 3. I'd like to show support for this project, and I wanted to ask for your yes vote. I want to speak up on this project and all that I feel it will bring to the city and the community. I think that self-storage and storage spaces are overlooked and not thought about a lot, but they are really, really important. Our residents need space and to safely store their valuables, and the entertainment industry needs very special conditions to store their film and production goods. This will provide, this project will provide both, Overall, I really think this project is good for everyone involved and seems to be a huge asset to the area. So please vote yes, and thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. Next speaker.
Good afternoon. How are you guys doing today? My name is Veta Basuto. I'm with the DTLA Anchor Church, and our ministry is so happy to support projects like these ones with clear community benefits for the people in our congregation who live and work in Los Angeles. We ask today that you vote yes and support in it as well to give those in need of a second chance, just like me. This project will help out with other people as well who need a second chance, like in the workforce as well. It got me away from my addiction, was alcoholic before, and if it helped me get out the streets, I know it will help out other people as well, and to improve their lives as well. Thank you very much.
Great, thank
God
you
bless.
very much. Okay, seeing no, one more speaker? Okay, go ahead, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Edgar Claudian, partner at the Mayor Bound Law Firm. On behalf of the applicant, I also support the project and ask you for your support. Thank you much.
Great, thank you. Okay, colleagues, no additional public comment. We've heard a lot of support. There's no opposition, no appeals. My recommendation is that we approve this. Seeing no comments or questions, let's call the roll.
Yes, Mr. Blumenfield.
Blumenfield, aye.
Ms. Hutt.
Aye.
Mr. Nassarian. Aye. Mr. Lee.
Aye.
And Ms. Rahman. Yes. That's 5 ayes and unanimous, sir.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Congratulations, this is approved. We move now to item number 5. If you could read that into the record.
Item 4, sir.
Oh, item 4. Did I skip? Look at that. Okay, item 4.
Yes, item 4, sir. This has the environmental clearance, the negative deck, the errata, and related findings. It's a zone change ordinance for the construction of a mixed-use hotel with 20 units, 4 units set aside for extremely low-income households. Project is located in CD10.
Okay, and this is an item that I'm going to recommend approval. There are no public comment speakers. Colleagues, does anyone wish to comment or ask questions on this item? If not, I will waive the presentation and move straight to the action, which is to recommend approving zone change ordinance, concur with the Planning Commission's adoption of the environmental clearance, the negative declaration, conditions approval, including the revised T infrastructure conditions and findings, all attached to the Planning Commission report dated November 22nd, subject to the conditions of approval and adoption of project findings. You could call the roll.
Yes, Mr. Blumenfield.
Blumenfield, aye.
Ms. Hutt.
Aye.
Mr. Nassarian. Aye. Mr. Lee.
Aye.
And Ms. Rahman. Yes. 5 ayes and unanimous, sir.
Great. Okay, now we can move to item 5. If you could read that one into the
Yes,
record.
sir. Item 5, this is a report from City Planning relative to recommendations as it relates to electric vehicle advertising in private parking lots and away from the public right-of-way.
Okay, we have a presentation from staff, and I note there are no public comment speakers on this item. Go ahead. Welcome.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Roberto Luna, City Planning Associate with the Department of City Planning. Item 5 concerns a report back in response to motion CF 220120S1. On June 18, 2024, the Plum Committee considered a report from DCP relative to recommendations for an ordinance to define allowable electric vehicle charging for all appropriate zones in the city of Los Angeles. The committee moved to approve DCP's recommendations as amended, providing DCP with 4 instructions, including preparing an ordinance to define EV charging uses in the zoning code. The report back presented to you today is a response to the Plum Committee's 4th instruction, which directed DCP and any other relevant departments to make recommendations relative to advertising in private parking lots and away from the public right-of-way. Given the main topic of this council file is EV charging, and on-site signs are generally allowed in the city, this report back primarily discusses off-site signs, namely digital signage in EV charging facilities.
Can you bring your microphone a little closer to you?
In the report, DCP staff included background information and context regarding the city's existing sign regulations, including relevant definitions and provisions. Off-site signs, or signs that display a message directing attention to a business, product, or service not sold or offered on the premises, are prohibited citywide with 4 limited exceptions. The most common exception is a sign district. A sign district may be initiated by the City Council, the Director of Planning, City Planning Commission, or a private applicant. A sign district ultimately requires City Council approval. Allowing off-site signage not currently permitted by the zoning code, specifically for EV charging, may conflict with the intent of the city sign regulations to curtail visual blight and provide local control regarding off-site signs, especially with no clear and apparent public benefit. Additionally, at a time when EV adoption is growing exponentially, zoning regulations for EV charging uses are necessary to successfully accommodate and sustainably shape this industry's growth in the city. Enacting such zoning regulations to define EV charging as a primary use and codify review and approval procedures for such a use should be the city's primary goal. And any other proposed regulations to allow off-site signs, especially digital signage, on EV chargers have the potential to significantly increase the EV charging ordinance's legislative adoption timeline due to additional review requirements under the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA, as well as the controversial nature of digital signage. Looking ahead, DCP will require resources to retain technical experts for the environmental analysis of the EV charging ordinance required by CEQA, as no resources for this part of the work program are identified in the fiscal year 24-25 budget. Therefore, DCP staff recommend the following. Instruct the Department of City Planning in coordination with the Department of Building and Safety and City Attorney to continue with instruction 1 as amended here today, 2 of the Plum Committee report dated June 18, 2024, and instruct the City Administrative Officer in coordination with the Department of City Planning to prepare a report with recommendations as to the funding sources and the fiscal impact up to $150,000 for the preparation of the environmental impact analysis required by the California Environmental Quality Act. DCP staff is available to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And I understand signage could provide additional revenue streams to potentially increase the viability of these charging stations, and including in communities with lower levels of EV ownership. I also recognize that there's a lot of complexity when you deal with these signage issues, and I appreciate Planning Department's report noting that there are approaches to signage on EV chargers that would not require changes to our off-site sign ordinances. In other words, just like with gas stations, they already can put signs on pumps. We can allow, all of those rules would still apply for an EV pump. I want our standards to ensure where revenue-generating sign is permitted, that the sign is only operational if the EV station is operational. And I say this as an EV driver and rider. When I'm in my car or my motorcycle driving and I'm looking for an EV station, I get very frustrated, as lots of people do, when the stations are there, but it's broken. And so what I don't want to happen is these things to have signage on them, but then they're making revenue on the sign and they don't do the maintenance. So I'm going to ask that if the pump ain't fine, you take down the sign. Basically, add a requirement in that if it's not operational, then you have to limit the sign and turn off the sign if it's a digital sign. So I'll do that in a formal amendment. Colleagues, any additional comments or questions on this item?
Yeah, I had a couple questions.
Go ahead, Councilwoman Robert.
And so the report detailed some of the challenges with with the EV ordinance and potential conflicts with our existing sign ordinance, right? Citywide sign ordinance, or some overlap in regulation. I just wondered whether you might clarify exactly what those conflicts or overlaps are. I know it was in the report, but I think it would be useful to hear it summarized here again.
Thank you for the question. Hopefully you can hear me well.
I'm sorry.
No worries.
It's really tough. These microphones are bad.
Yeah, I will
normally
speak closely. Can I just ask to clarify? And the reason for the clarification is that today, off-site signage is only allowed through a sign district.
Right.
So there isn't an inherent conflict with the way on-site signage that is typically seen in a gas station, for example.
And those gas station signs, the digital signs that I've seen, are basically like a taxi cab video size advertisement that's on the pump. And that's what these would be like as well?
That's not our understanding of the format or typology that newer EV charging stations would use. I think important to distinguish that the allowance of off-site signage in those more traditional gas stations is because of the existing canopy that they're under, and that could in fact be the same context that an electrical vehicle charging station could operate under, to Councilmember Blumenfield's point. It's just that if there is no canopy and they're opting to do, electrical vehicle charging, that would not, under today's rules, be permissive of off-site digital signage. So the canopy plays actually a very important role in the distinction between what is off-site signage. It's a nuance that's a little
So can you
quirky.
explain in this context, so off-site signage means anything that's freestanding, not under a canopy?
In a way, yes, because the canopy is essentially a structure, and in the same way that we don't regulate digital signage or digital advertising inside
Within a
someone's
structure,
home
yeah.
under a structure, it's the same concept, just strangely applied because there are no vertical walls under a canopy.
Right, so what is the recommendation that you're making about this issue for, what are we basically, the report brought up a number of challenges with regulating this. I also had another question or comment, which is that we have a program now for digital advertising on our bus shelters. And we've regulated signs in other places through the citywide sign ordinance, right? And I'm wary about what it means for our program, our STAP program. Like, what would the implications be for our STAP program if there's opportunities for digital advertisement across a range of possibilities across the entire city that don't have to have a sign district established, and that are also kind of look different from what our existing rules are for gas stations? Like, how would those two desires that the city has placed a kind of a...
And to be clear, that's why that very question is why we're not moving forward on opening this up. And correct me, staff, correct me
Yeah,
if
so I
I'm
just
wrong.
want to make sure I understand what's happening.
So as I understand it, in addressing your question, you clarify, by taking this action, we are not allowing off-site signage. Off-site signing meaning advertising for products that are not on the site. If you can't advertise Exxon at a mini mart if they're not. That's not who owns. You could advertise the mini mart, your own place, but that's our current laws. So we're not changing any of our current laws vis-a-vis signage. If we did, it would be a much more engaged process because it would compete with the stat and it would compete with all of our sign ordinances. So we're just moving forward with allowing the electric vehicles charging stations under the existing sign rules that you have. Is that correct? Correct me if I'm wrong, please.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
Okay, all right.
Mr. Lee?
Yeah, so I apologize. I'm a little confused. We're trying to look for ways to have companies build EV charging stations to encourage in neighborhoods across the city of LA to buy electric vehicles. But chicken or egg, we can't encourage them if we don't have these. So we're trying to give them a revenue stream, correct? Yeah, so to build these on-site, to advertise on-site. Is that correct? Am I right so far? I see a bunch of blank stares.
Well, let me maybe clarify, Hagu Salman Carey, for the record. I think the intent is to provide a, pathway through the zoning code to do electrical vehicle charging, yes, throughout the city, and in particular where there is a need to, have more pervasive uptake in EV, usership. I guess I would say that, the existing rules on the books today, two things happen. One, you simultaneously don't allow off-site digital signage outside of a sign district, but we also allow gas stations to do off-site advertising under a canopy, which is technically a structure. So while there's no explicit rules and regulations under this recommendation to allow digital operators to do off-site signage, existing rules do provide a pathway.
I got it. So you believe existing city rules allow them to, under the same rules that govern gas stations, to provide advertising so they can...
Yeah, I think I would say there's a tacit implication because there's no rules to regulate against that, but there's no policy intent that, like we're trying to create, that would be for for electrical vehicles that, do not provide off-site signage, if that makes any sense. The lack of clarity, I think, on the roof structure relative to the off-site signage is a purview of our existing rules. There's no policy intent that we're recommending to pursue off-site digital signage specifically for EV charging.
So there wouldn't, since we're not pursuing something, there's no EIR, so we can just proceed and allow the money.
Yeah, and I would just say because there's no explicit rules, that's the purview of the EV operator and developer to pursue that. I think there is no specific clarity to provide that.
Got it.
Councilwoman Hutt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When we're talking about these advertising opportunities, are we also talking about wrapping any part of it? So it would be non-digital, but it would be advertising like you wrap a car, but you would wrap a whole or piece of that for advertising purposes?
Rachel, for the record, we're really talking about off-site or on-site digital signage that'll be installed as part of the EV charging stations. So if you go to Whole Foods, for example, they have certain EV charging stations that are erected on their property, and some of them outside of the city of LA, they do have some sort of signage. So that's the type of signage we're really discussing here.
Oh, and what's the maximum digital size that can be on the charging station? Has that been determined? Excuse me.
Rachel, for the record, so currently the maximum size and dimension requirements would be according to the sign regulations in the code.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Rowan, could you use the microphone?
Yeah, what is the sign regulations in the code? How big can it be?
Right, Rachel, for the record, so it really depends on the signage type. For example, there are wall signs. The code has different signage, dimension and sizing requirements for wall signs versus monument signs, post signs. So it really depends on the type of signage that an applicant is proposing. And we're happy to look into the digital signage requirements for you as well.
Okay, sorry, I couldn't hear you fully. I'm sorry, these microphones are really hard to understand, but if you said you'd provide me the rules?
Yes, so, sorry.
If you just yell, I think it'll be fine.
Can you hear me okay? Is that
Yeah.
better? Okay. So it really depends on the type of signage that an applicant is proposing. So a wall sign can have different dimension and overall square footage requirements. That could be different from a pole sign, for example. So it really depends on the type of signage that's being proposed.
But I think Councilmember Hutt was asking specifically about the digital signage, right? And you're talking about the size for digital signs?
That's correct. And digital sign is actually not considered a type of sign as in a structure. So it really depends on how the digital sign is installed onto a structure. So for example, if it's installed onto a wall sign, it would be subject to the requirement of a wall sign, whereas if it's a pole sign, a digital sign attached to the pole sign, then it would be based on the sizing requirements of a pole sign. I hope that clears your...
What is the size of sign that we're kind of allowing to go forward here? Let's say the largest maximum digital sign that we're approving under this.
May Hugla Solomon Carey for the record. I think Nuri made a good point. There is no definition for this type of sign, but the type of sign that shows up under a canopy, I believe, is a wall sign.
Those type of signs are called interior signs.
Interior signs. And we'll double check and confirm, but I don't believe there are regulations that stipulate maximum, minimum sizes. But certainly if that's the will of the committee, we can incorporate that. Just needing to point out that there's a some nuancing that should probably happen in the code as it relates to interior signs that are, without walls, and digital signage that is enclosed within, vertical walls. So we can certainly nuance that if there's a concern with just how large they may be.
And just to be clear, so we're talking, the rules are identical to what is in a gas station, correct?
Yes, I can say it like this. If nothing is changed in the code outside of the instruction to create an ordinance for EV signage, if an EV operator wanted to provide digital signage on or off-site under a structure, it would be exactly the same as a gas station, but you may see a difference from just a layperson's, observation, because the technology is newer, the, screens have changed, et cetera. But the rules and the regs would remain the same in so much as there's no recommendation to amend those to include the ability outright to do off-site digital signage.
Right, so what we would be moving forward today doesn't address at all the size or the content of signs. It merely says we want you to start allowing folks to have as a defined use electric charging stations in parking lots or wherever. And then the secondary issue comes in, well then what does that mean in terms of the signs on this allowable use? And at the moment, if we don't speak to that issue at all, which is what's in front of us, the rules remain what they are for gas stations. But we, as a council, can at any time come forward and tweak those rules. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Right, so what's before us doesn't restrict or authorize anything new vis-a-vis type sign, size of sign, anything. It just basically creates a defined use of electric vehicle charging subject to the existing laws that a gas station would have.
Agreed. If the recommendations by our department as amended in the council file are adopted, that is correct.
Okay.
And Nuricho, for the record, that is correct. So the ordinance would really address EV charging station as a primary use. And if Plumbing Council were to adopt staff recommendation as recommended, then the EV ordinance would not address any components of signage. And whether it's gas station or EV charging station, they would all just be subject to the same sign regulations that are currently in the code.
So colleagues, my recommendation is to move, I do think this is a big issue. What the signs are going to look like. We don't know what those issues are going to be. But I don't think we need to address that at the moment. The immediate issue is creating a defined use so that we get more electric vehicle charging stations subject to our current code. Now, our current code may not be good enough. We may have to change that. But that's going to end up requiring CEQA and a whole bunch of stuff, and it's going to take a long time, potentially. So my thought is that we move forward as amended by the planning department and with a few other things I'll add in here. But I don't want to cut off discussion. I did want folks to know at least what I was thinking. Colleagues, any other comments or concerns or questions to bring up at this point? Okay. So my recommendation is going to be to, as you stated, to approve the recommendation as amended on the October 24th Planning Department report, which is, as you stated, instruct the Planning Department in coordination with the Department of Building and Safety and City Attorney to continue with instructions 1, as amended and underlined, and 2, the Plum Committee report of CF 22-0120-S1 dated June 18th, as adopted by the City Council. Also, to instruct the Department of City Planning in coordination with the Los Angeles Department of Building and Safety and City Attorney to prepare and present an ordinance to amend Chapters 1, Current Zoning Code, and 1A, New Zoning Code of the Los Angeles Municipal Code to appropriately define electric vehicle, EV, charging as a primary use citywide, specifically for light, medium, and heavy-duty vehicles, including private fleet charging. I'm adding those words in. And include standards for ministerial and discretionary approvals for such use in appropriate zones. Clear performance standards should maintain scalability and flexibility through alternative options, consider community benefits and citywide design guidance goals. That was all in there. And then I'm adding, and ensure that charging stations are properly maintained, including limiting any signage when stations are not operable. And then additionally, as you had, instruct the DCP in collaboration with the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power to include considerations and recommendations for an equitable expansion of new electric vehicle charging stations, development prioritizing access for renter households in disadvantaged communities while maintaining multimodal goals. And then 2, to strike instruction 3 from the June 18, 2024 Plum Committee report, and 3, to approve recommendation 2 in the October 24, 2024 Planning Department report as follows. Instruct the city administrative officer in coordination with the planning department to prepare a report with recommendations as to the funding sources and the fiscal impact up to $150,000 for the preparation of the environmental impact analysis required by CEQA. So I was clear about what I was adding. I read all your instructions to make it very clear. With that, let's call the roll.
Mr. Blumenfield.
Blumenfield, aye.
Ms. Hutt.
Aye.
Mr. Nassarian.
Aye.
Mr. Lee.
Aye.
Ms. Rahman.
Yes.
5 ayes and unanimous, sir.
Great, thank you. Now we'll move to item 6.
Item 6, sir, is a joint report from Planning and the Department of Building and Safety and a resolution, Blumenfield-McCosker, recommending the time extension of the zoning and land use relief provisions within COVID-19 local emergency ordinance targeted small business relief.
Okay, we have one public speaker, but we will start with the department report. Welcome.
Good afternoon, council members. Diego Hanako Cortez with the Department of City Planning. Before you is a joint report from DCP and DBS recommending the council to extend the local emergency ordinance, better known as the LEO, for an additional and final 12-month period to February 2026. For background, the LEO became effective July 1st, 2021, to provide regulatory relief to businesses impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic by reducing the processing time and fees associated with meeting parking requirements and time limits and entitlement conditions for commercial businesses. In February 2024, the City Council extended the provisions of the LEO for 12 months to February 2025 and instructed DCP and DBS to report back on the utility of the LEO and to make a staff recommendation on an additional 12-month extension to February 2026. The joint report highlights that LEO has helped small businesses avoid costly and time-consuming applications. For example, businesses applying for change of use in the Ventura Cahuenga specific plan saved over $473,000 in fees, while processing times were reduced from 6 months to 1 business day. LEO usage also surged in 2024 for applications requesting parking relief and time extensions, suggesting that more small businesses are learning and taking advantage of the LEO. The LEO has been a vital tool for commercial corridors. Extending the provisions would continue to support local employment and contribute to the city's broader economic recovery. Finally, the LEO offers valuable lessons as the city works on developing more long-term solutions to support small businesses in the city. Based on the findings, staff recommends an extension of the LEO for an additional 12-month period to February 2026 for a total of 36 months, which would be the final allowable extension as permitted by the ordinance. The extension would continue to provide essential regulatory relief to small business recovery and continue to support more efficient city permit processing. This concludes the staff presentation. We're now available for questions.
Great. Before we get to questions, is Mr. Eddie Navarrete here? Sign up for public comment. Please come to the microphone. You have 1 minute, and welcome. Sorry, could you turn this microphone on, you guys?
Hello, yeah, there we go.
Okay, go ahead.
Hi, Eddie Navarrete with the IHC. I'm here to show my support for item 6, also known as the Emergency Planning Ordinance, originally launched during the pandemic. The pandemic is a time that seems very familiar now. The indirect impacts to restaurants and the fires have dropped patronage down 80 to 90% for our restaurant community. It's like a localized COVID, only impacting restaurants here in Los Angeles. At a time we have already been reeling from impacts from entertainment strikes and inflation, to reconnect the red tape at this critical moment is not what we need. We need to throw the tape away that is no longer serving the interests of public necessity. To the contrary, we must preserve and support this fragile community by taking it a step further. Make this policy permanent. The impacts we are seeing today from the fires will not cease this year. This is a marathon, my friends. What restaurants need right now is cash and patronage. If we cannot give them those things, we can lessen the death by 1,000 cuts. Members, I appreciate your aye vote and consideration to make this policy permanent.
Great, thank you very much. Colleagues, I had originally proposed the LEO at the start of the COVID pandemic, when it became clear that business closures and safer at home orders meant that businesses were really potentially going to fail. I wanted a tool to help existing businesses, to make it easier for new businesses to move in when existing ones went out of business. And while the LEO hasn't been used in an overwhelming number, in part because state law has provided parking relief for many businesses that could otherwise use the LEO, it still has been an important tool for some businesses. And the LEO might provide a tool for businesses that need to relocate during the recent fires as well. So because of all that and the fact that it's still providing a benefit, I introduced the resolution to extend the provisions of the LEO for a third and what would be under the original authority, the final year. At some point, we can look into making it permanent, but at the moment, we're looking at, under our existing authority, expanding it for a year. Colleagues, any additional comments or questions? Councilwoman Rahman.
Sorry, I did actually, Eddie's comment was what the question, summarize the question I had, which is, if we haven't had these rules in place, or we've had these relaxations in place for a number of years already, and they haven't caused undue burdens on our communities, what is the purpose of the original regulation in the first place? I'm curious about why.
Address that to staff. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think the inception of this ordinance was originally to address COVID-19 and recovery efforts. I think that was kind of the original intent. Right. Was that getting to your question?
No, but that's, that's okay. I think it's fine. It was more of a comment. I guess I would just saying, I'm happy to move this forward, but it does strike me that if we are in year 5 of not having much of these regulations in place and they have not caused significant challenges in our neighborhoods, then I would question the value of the original regulations.
Hago Salomon Carey for the record, just to add, appreciate your comments. I think I would just say, as Councilmember Blumenfield mentioned, the state has really upped the floor with bills like Assembly Bill 2097 that is far supersedes and surpasses what the LEO provided in terms of parking relief. So I think we're saying, we were ahead of the state in some ways in response. Now the state has surpassed us. To be specific, this ordinance only allows parking relief for a change of use permit, and for only a change of use that's no more than 5,000 square feet, whereas AB 2097 prohibits cities from requiring any parking standards. So in many ways, again, we were surpassed, and I think the parking relief was the key to the LEO. Some of the other provisions I think are less utilized, like, more on the process side. So I would say we were ahead of the curve, and now we're happy to see the state taking the lead to help businesses in this regard.
Great, thank you. Appropriate question, as this person who honored Shoop this earlier as a Shoopista, so dealing with the parking issues, certainly happy to work with you in looking at making this permanent moving forward. But right now, let's move on what's in front of us. So I'm going to recommend that we approve the recommendation of the Joint Planning Department Building and Safety Report dated January 28th to extend the provisions of Municipal Code 16-02.1, relief from specified land use, to provide temporary regulatory relief from certain automobile parking provisions and extending time limitations for utilizing an approved conditional use permit or similar quasi-judicial action during and for an additional 12-month period for the total maximum of 36 months after the termination or expiration of the COVID-19 local emergency order, resulting in an end date of these relief provisions of February 1st, 2026. Adopt the resolution, Bloomingfield-McCosker, dated 2/5/25, recommending that the council extend the provisions of Municipal Code Section 1602-1. That's what's before us. We call the roll.
Yes, Mr. Blumenfield.
Blumenfield, aye.
Ms. Hutt.
Aye.
Mr. Nassarian.
Aye.
Mr. Lee.
Aye.
And Ms. Rahman.
Yes.
5 ayes and unanimous, sir.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you all. Next, we move to item number 7.
7.
If you could read that one into the
Yes,
record.
item 7, sir, it's a motion, Park Nazarian, directing city planning along with the city attorney, building and safety, and other relevant departments to prepare and present a draft ordinance to exempt Olympic and Paralympic temporary and permanent venues from the requirements of planning approvals, zoning regulations, and conditions, and any other planning and zoning regulations that could impede or delay the rapid deployment and/or use of essential Olympic facilities and related matters.
Great, and we have 4 speakers on the queue for this. We'll start with the department report. If you're one of those speakers that signed up, you're welcome to line up, and I'll call your name in a moment, but go ahead, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, council members. Ken Bernstein with City Planning's Office of Historic Resources and Urban Design Studio. I'm joined by Maritza Preskop, who is our senior city planner, point person for Olympics, Paralympics planning, and Hagu Solomon Carey, our principal city planner for code studies. As Mr. Mejia mentioned, this motion would direct our department in coordination with several other agencies and offices to prepare a report with recommendations and an accompanying draft ordinance to exempt Olympic and Paralympic improvement projects from planning and zoning approvals, and it would direct the Department of Building and Safety to establish a dedicated unit to coordinate all development-related services for 2028 Games projects. While the 2028 Games have been touted as a no-build Games and the major Games venues are already built and operational, this motion recognizes there may be the need for related improvements or structures, including temporary uses or media facilities, fan zones, and other structures that may be critical to staging the Games successfully. Our department therefore looks forward to the referral of this motion to staff and looks forward to collaborating with the council offices, the new Office of Major Events, and the other city departments, including LADBS, to make recommendations on the most expeditious and appropriate tools to achieve the motion's goals. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay. Before we get to that, we'll move to public comment. We have Phyllis Ling, Ron Frank, James Finney-Conlon, and Junie Wong. So if you've heard your name called, please come on up to the left side of the room, and you don't have to go the exact order that I called you, but just come on up in 1 minute apiece. Go ahead. Mr. Conlon. Okay. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair and esteemed members. My name is James Finney-Conlon. I'm here on behalf of the Los Angeles Area Chamber of Commerce to give our support for this very important motion. We look forward to streamlining processes so that Los Angeles can truly be ready for a once-in-a-generation economic event. We really want to be on top of the ball, and we recognize this motion is very important and has the opportunity to help fast-track much-needed infrastructure projects. I wanted to give my gratitude to the members here for their hard work and offer support. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, if you could exit to the right. Your other right.
My name is Phyllis Ling. I'm with the Neighborhood Council. Will I get extra time?
No, only, did you submit a community impact statement?
Yes, I did.
Okay, great, then you have 2 minutes. Welcome.
Good afternoon. My name is Phyllis Ling, and I'm the chair of the Historic Cultural North Neighborhood Council, which represents Chinatown, El Pueblo, Solano Canyon, and Victor Heights, 4 historic and culturally rich neighborhoods, including the birthplace of our city. Our Neighborhood Council approved a community impact statement in opposition to the motion being considered today, or that was on the agenda today, to draft an ordinance to exempt Olympics-related projects from CEQA, city planning approvals, zoning regulations, and permitting regulations. We found the proposal vague and wide-reaching, and it rolls out the red carpet for abuse while placing the burden of the consequences on our communities. What this motion is asking for is dramatic, and the language of the motion included not only the Olympics, but quote-unquote other major events. What other major events? That is one of the big questions our Neighborhood Council had. The other two questions we asked are, one, what is the process for determining whether a project is essential for the Olympics? And two, what criteria would be used to determine the project that would qualify for these exemptions? We feel that this proposal introduces too many opportunities for abuse and corruption. Major permanent infrastructure and development must not be forced on our communities without transparency and community engagement. As well, our council noted that the 2028 Games were awarded over 7 years ago. Yes, preparing to host the Olympics is a huge undertaking, but no, the ticking time clock and slow progress over the past 7 years by the Games organizers should not be an excuse to weaken regulations that are meant to protect all of us. Our community should not have to deal with the consequences of poor planning, especially not for the games that were sold to us as the quote-unquote no-build games. Our board, which includes Barendo Street and Chinatown business owners, residents, property owners, and other community members, voted 15-1 to approve the statement in opposition to the motion. We only received public comments in support of our statement and in opposition to the motion that was placed on your agenda. We ask for responsibility, accountability, transparency, including our voices in the decisions that are made in our communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, next speaker.
This motion needs to go back to the drawing board. Just because the rule of law is dog poop in Washington, D.C. doesn't mean it's okay for this Trojan horse motion to move forward. We don't need any dojification here that does away with checks and balances, giving carte blanche to any group who didn't have their S together enough to have their ducks in a row after 8 years of knowing the Olympics were coming. This is an overly broad attempt to evade oversight and accountability over projects that would likely be disallowed otherwise. For example, the gondola project. The Hernandez Commission traffic study needs to be completed before this project is approved. There are Metro-assigned conditions required to be met before the gondola can be approved. With a rambling list of Olympic aspects to be exempted and given free rein, slipped in the middle is transit infrastructure. This is like that movie scene where the teenagers at the shop counter trying to buy condoms, hoping no one notices. I'll take a soda, a comb, some gum, cigarettes, condoms, transit infrastructure, and a Snickers bar. Exempt the gondola project if this motion moves forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hi, my name is Junie Wong, and I'm a part of the Stop the Gondola Coalition, and I want the Planning Committee to vote no on item number 7 and complete the report back requested by CD1 on the impacts and consequences of this motion. We just heard that this was supposed to be a no-build Olympics, and now it looks like the city wants to give a free pass to developers and corporations and bypass our community input for projects that could dramatically alter our neighborhoods. We never see the city move like this for real emergencies, like housing the homeless or even a simple rent freeze and eviction moratorium in the wake of mass displacement from the devastating Eaton and Palisades fires. We do not have our priorities straight if we are fast-tracking means for sports entertainment instead of the means for people's basic livelihood. In Chinatown, we are fighting against that same bias when it comes to the horrible LA Art gondola to Dodger Stadium, a development that would only benefit the billionaire Frank McCourt, who is behind it, at the immense expense of the people, the renters, and small businesses of Chinatown and Barendo Street that it wants to build on top of. Why? So we can have a shiny tour for the Olympic stage? This is an issue of how the city is choosing to use its power to benefit who. Los Angeles does not need the Olympics, and Los Angeles does not need the gondola. Vote no on item 7. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I believe that exhausts all the speakers for this item. Thank you all for your testimony. We'll now move it to discussion, and I'll get us started. And I certainly, by the way, I understand the desire to give the departments the opportunity to report back on the potential implications of a proposed ordinance, because there are a lot of questions here, especially because we don't yet have a city decision on the venue changes requested by LA 28, so we don't really have an exhaustive list. But I also recognize the 28 games are rapidly approaching, and for the next 3.5 years, we're going to have to make a lot of decisions without perfect information. Please don't disrupt this meeting, whoever was doing that, and adapt to changing circumstances as they arise. So my thought is that we could do both. We could ask the departments to report back, and we can request an ordinance. And because we're operating in a bit of a vacuum about what the proposed projects would be, what I'd like to do is to be clear and create a carve-out for particular projects that council determines based on things like size and location should not be subject to the streamlining process. So my thought is that we can move forward with this and get the report back, but create an opt-out provision so that the fears that have been expressed here today can be allayed, and that those fears that we all share, that certain things might be shoehorned into this, that we as a council would have that opt-out by a simple majority. If there is a project that is, being moved forward on the streamlining and we don't think it's appropriate, we can opt that project out. So that's what I'm going to ask you to see if you can draw into that. Also, one of the city's stated goals is to make the 28 games as car-free as possible. So to that end, I also want to make it clear that we're not creating an ordinance that would allow projects to avoid mobility improvements that are envisioned or required under Measure HLA. For example, we can't call a road resurfacing project near a venue a 2028 games project in order to avoid the obligation to install transit or pedestrian or bicycle improvements that would otherwise be required. So I'm going to ask that that also be made clear in the draft ordinance. And obviously what we're looking at today is requesting that you move forward on the report about the implications and also move forward on drafting an ordinance that we obviously would look at as well. So colleagues, I want to open it up to comments and questions. Councilwoman Rahman.
So I'm glad that, so just to clarify, we are moving forward with the request both for a report back on what would be impacted by the ordinance. Correct. And what the ordinance would mean for those kinds of projects, and then as well as a draft ordinance, a request for a draft ordinance. And then just want to understand from you, as the chair of this committee, what's the process for looking at that as it comes back? Will we look at both the report back and the ordinance at the same time? Will we have a chance to kind of examine the findings of that report back and give feedback to the ordinance?
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, what came before us is to just do the ordinance.
Yes.
And I'm trying to expand that to say, because some folks wanted to do a report instead of the ordinance, and
Right.
I think we can
Let's do both.
chew gum and walk.
Sure.
To get the report.
Yeah.
And let them start working on the ordinance as well, and then have them both come back at the same time, so that we have something in hand.
Yeah.
In addition to the addition that I asked them to put in there, which is the opt-out provision. Because, as I stated, I mean, I think the concerns are very real that things could be put in there that we all would not have wanted to be in there. So if for me to be comfortable with this, I want to see that there is a safety valve that we as a council can exercise. But I'm open to any other suggestions of how to move forward on this. But that wanted to put that out there as a possible pathway to move forward on this item.
So I had one comment on the report back and then one comment on your proposal, and then I'll cede the floor. On the report back, one of the biggest questions that came up as I was reading the motion is, what does temporary infrastructure mean versus permanent? I think there's lots of infrastructure that you think is being built for a short-term basis that ends up being long-term infrastructure. In cities, you see this all the time. And so I would want a clear understanding of what exactly a piece of temporary infrastructure or a temporary intervention would mean that would qualify for this kind of fast tracking. Councilmember Blumenfield, I completely understand the need to move quickly on this, and I know that the process of writing ordinances can take a long time, so I'm comfortable with doing the report back and the ordinance at the same time, and I appreciate you offering that up. But I did want to offer one piece of feedback on the proposal that you have suggested, which is that council members can pull individual projects off of the approval list. To me, if it's dependent on an individual to address an individual project, that's a recipe for...
Well, I said the council, not the way I envisioned it wasn't, council members don't have that authority. The council has that authority.
Right,
so,
but
I was saying by a majority vote.
Right, but we do have a practice in this council of deferring to the council member in whose district a project resides. I mean, that's often what people say on the floor, that they say, you know, you know your constituents, we respect your views, and that has been a kind of you know, something that people have cited many times. You know this issue best because it's in your district. To me, that kind of discretion has also resulted in a lot of corruption. It's kind of a recipe for corruption. And so what I would rather see is a set of, you know, standards or clear kind of protocol that will end up having something taken out of this process, as opposed to, oh, if the council member decides it needs to be, you know, taken out of a fast-tracked approval process, then it can be. Because I think that sets us up for a process that has no basis. What's the rational basis on which we're taking action here, you know? So I want to understand, what is temporary infrastructure, what is permanent infrastructure? Are we only exempting temporary infrastructure, or are we also exempting certain kinds of permanent infrastructure from this? I think that's really important to understand. I also want to know, the other thing I was really curious about is to understand how we will be informed when projects are being taken through this fast-tracking process. Like, how will the council or the specific council district in which a project is being planned for be made aware that this project is going through this process at all? Because we don't necessarily, you know, depending on the nature of the project, we may not even know unless there's a process through which we can understand it. But, you know, mostly I always have concerns about projects that are dependent on council member discretion because of the challenges that that poses to, I think, what makes more sense to me, which is a set of planning rules that we have citywide that we just follow for, you know, a process.
We can certainly, I mean, we can certainly ask for a report back to see if they can create such a process. Politically, I think it's going to be, we haven't seen that. It's going to be difficult to come up with that exhaustive list, which is why I thought in both politically and expediently, one way to handle this, to create that valve, is to have a council vote process, so that we'd have to stand up in front of the world and the public and explain why we're pulling something off of that list, and so that it's not a objective criteria, but it is a public process. I think it would be difficult in this way to move something forward if people are nervous that the projects that they're worried about, if they don't see a clear way that they're going to be able to prevent those from having to go through or avoid the CEQA process. Like the gondola that folks mentioned as an example, is a good example. That's a project that doesn't come to mind immediately as an Olympic project, but you could see how someone might make it one, and we can create objective criteria, or we could have it as a vote of this council. Colleagues, any additional comments? Okay, Councilwoman Hutt.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Councilmember Rahman, for asking for a definition of the terms of permanent infrastructure and temporary infrastructure, especially when it comes to venues. I'd also like to know or see some kind of detailed list of what the approval process looks like and the specific regulations that could be waived for these items, so that we have an understanding. If you're going to use a park and you're putting up a stand-up pool, like what does that look like, or any of those kinds of things that we'll be using, and also defining projects like the gondola. Is that temporary? They're putting it up for 6 months and then they're going to take it down? We just need to know so that we're not surprised by just what you're talking about.
Yeah, so all these things that you're hearing, we want to make sure that everything everybody's mentioning on this committee is included in the report back.
Thank you.
And those things, and including that, like, you know, what is the process to determine if something is Olympic related? You know, how do we cross, what is the threshold for that? And maybe that will also speak to Councilwoman Rahman's desire to have more objective criteria. Colleagues, any additional comments or questions?
Councilmember Blumenfield, if I may.
Yes, please.
Would it be acceptable if the report back did come prior to the ordinance in the event that there's
Absolutely.
clarity that's needed?
I think that the assumption was either with the ordinance or before the ordinance. We would much rather have it before the ordinance, but I think what Ms. Rahman was rightfully concerned about was what we don't want is the report back after the ordinance.
I think the reality, if I could add, Ken Bernstein, the reality is that obviously the steps needed to develop the ordinance, the public engagement, the steps also to bring it to City Planning Commission likely, and then to Plum and Council would take longer than the initial preparation of the report back. So while we can proceed with both on a parallel track, we'd be happy to bring some of the policy considerations forward for discussion before the ordinance would be ready for referral, if that's acceptable.
Great. No, that's exactly what we want. So we will, the recommendation was read at the beginning of this hearing, which that was the one we decided whether we had to read it before or after, but we read it all into the record. But to make sure that you also pick up all the things that we've added here into the report back, so that we can make that determination. But again, we don't want to slow down the writing of the ordinance, given everything. So that's why we're moving forward both parallel tracks. Colleagues, any other comments or questions? Otherwise, I think we can move to a roll call.
So the motion is adopted as amended, as read at the beginning of the meeting, inclusive of Ms. Ramon's request for the definition of temporary versus permanent infrastructure, what qualifies for fast tracking, and also to inform the council offices so that they are aware of this process, in addition to Ms. Hutt's request of an approval process that describes the permitting process as well, and the city planning department will report back or provide the recommendations in the report back prior to the draft ordinance.
Okay, and if we could add CLA to the reporting departments as well.
Okay, and the CLA is added as well.
Okay.
So I will call the roll as amended with all those instructions.
Great.
Mr. Blumenfield?
Blumenfield, aye.
Ms. Hutt?
Aye.
Mr. Nassarian?
Aye.
Mr. Lee?
Aye.
And Ms. Rahman?
Yes.
5 ayes, and that's adopted, sir.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, chronologically, the next item is 8, but we are going to jump to, per a committee member's request, jump to item 10 next, and then after 10, we'll do 8 and 9.
Sure.
It's a timing
Item
issue.
10, council members, it's including an environmental impact report, the 3003 Runyon Canyon Project EIR, the findings, the mitigation monitoring program, and a report from the South Valley Area Planning Commission, which includes 3 appeals, 1 by Paul Edelman from the Santa Monica Conservancies, 2 by Garrett Weinstein from the Mountains and Recreation and Conservation Authority, and 3 by Mr. Jamie Hall from Channel Law Group. They're challenging the approval of the 5 land use determinations, inclusive of the Hall Route approval if needed. And this is for the construction of a new 2-story single-family dwelling, which includes a 2-car garage and related matters as described on the agenda, subject to conditions of approval and adoption of project findings.
Okay, so we'll have the planning department present their report, then we'll ask the appellants to present their appeals, then we'll have the applicant respond, and then we will hear from members of the public, of which we have 25 people signed up, and then we will have council discussion on this. So let's start with the planning department, if you could present your report.
Good afternoon. I'm Katie Knudsen with the City Planning Department. Before you today is an appeal of the South Valley Area Planning Commission's approval of a specific plan exception, zone variance, zoning administrator determinations, project permit and design review for a new single-family home in the Mulholland Scenic Parkway specific plan. The South Valley APC also certified the project's EIR and adopted the EIR findings and mitigation monitoring program. 3 appeals were filed from the Hillside Federation, Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy, and the Mountains Recreation and Conservation Authority. The Planning Department has submitted a written response to the appeals for inclusion in the council file. The appeal points address the applicability of the state minimum fire safe regulations, the size of the accessory living quarters, the adequacy of the project EIR alternatives, and several other appeal points that were already addressed in the final EIR. Upon careful consideration of the appeal, staff has determined that the appellant's objections lack merit and do not demonstrate that the city erred or abused its discretion in certifying the EIR and approving the associated entitlements and project. In addition, no new substantial evidence was presented to the city, that the city has erred in its actions relative to the EIR and the associated entitlements, nor was any new information to dispute the findings of the EIR or the APC's actions on this matter. Therefore, staff recommends that the appeal be denied and that the actions of the APC be sustained. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next we'll hear from the appellants. Are the appellants present? Go with Paul Edelman from Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy, Garrett Weinstein, Jamie Hall. If any of you are here, we have 3 minutes total. You guys can divide up the time as you wish. You want to do 1 minute for each of you, or however you want to do it?
Let's go with 1 minute for each.
Okay.
Honorable members, this should be a really simple decision. This project provides nothing for the park, and it just detracts from the park. It's horrible for the park. It's probably the most damaging project I've seen in 35 years working for the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy. And I don't think anybody other than the applicant circle wants this. It's just not about a design nip and tuck to make this fit on a ridgeline. It doesn't fit. It's a hardship created by the applicant. We urge you to support our appeal. This is completely discretionary, and why with discretion would you approve something that ruins Runyon Canyon Park? Thank you so much, and I'll hand it over to Mr. Weinstein.
Honorable council members, I might need a little more than 1 minute. This project is an island of private property surrounded by Runyon Canyon Park, one of the city's most popular hiking destinations. The project is requesting exemptions from the Mulholland specific plan to permanently mar one of the most visually prominent public view sheds in the Mulholland Scenic Corridor with a 6,000 square foot second house on already developed property that already has limited emergency access as it is. The applicant's hardships are really disproportionate to the variance and exceptions being asked for. The decision to allow 28,000 cubic yards of grading adjacent to a prominent ridgeline just ridicules the baseline hillside ordinance and the Mulholland specific plan. If we only learn one lesson from the recent wildfires, we should learn many, but if we only learn one, it should be that we should strictly enforce our existing ordinances in fire-prone areas. Please do the responsible thing and uphold our appeals. Thank you.
Thank you.
And just as a matter of procedure, the Hillside Federation filed its own appeals. Normally we get 3 minutes to speak, so I would request 3 minutes. I prepared a 3-minute presentation.
I'm new to the chairmanship. Is that how we do it here?
Yes, 3 minutes for each appellant.
Oh, for each appellant. Okay, great.
Okay, great. Good afternoon. My name is Jamie Hall. I'm a land use and environmental attorney with Channel Law Group. I'm here representing the Federation of Hillside and Canyon Associations, commonly known as the Hillside Federation. My comments today will focus on the project's non-compliance with the new state minimum fire safe regulations. These regulations have been in place for many years, but in 2022 were made applicable to the very high fire hazard severity zones within unincorporated cities such as the city of Los Angeles. The regulations very clearly state their intent as follows, quote, roads and driveways, whether private or public, unless exempted, shall provide for safe access for emergency wildfire equipment and civilian evacuation concurrently, and shall provide unobstructed traffic circulation during a wildfire emergency. The project you are considering today does not comply with these new state minimum fire standards. Staff has made several arguments in rebuttal. First, staff has argued that these new state regulations only apply when a new road is being constructed. This is absolutely not true. In 2019, the County of Monterey made the exact same argument. The California Attorney General then submitted a letter to the county refuting this. The AG's letter states, quote, it is the construction of a new project that triggers the application of the regulations. The fact that the project is being constructed at the end of an existing road does not negate the triggering effect of the new construction. A contrary interpretation would incentivize development without adequate evacuation routes and emergency access rather than prevent it. So that staff's argument that the regulations are only triggered when a new road is being constructed can be completely disregarded. Second, staff has argued LAFD has already reviewed the project and found no problems. Again, this is not correct. I asked for a copy of that LAFD letter, and it's actually dated January 5th, 2017, over 8 years ago. Of course, LAFD did not note any issues of non-compliance with the regulations because they weren't applicable to the city until 2022. And the letter does not state that the project will comply with LAFD's standard conditions as indicated in the staff report. In fact, The letter demonstrates that the project will not comply with the staff conditions, standard conditions. One of those standard conditions in the LAFD letter says, the width of private roadways for general access use and fire lanes shall not be less than 20 feet. And it is undisputed that Runyon Canyon Road is less than 20 feet wide. In fact, it varies from 12.5 feet to 16 feet. So why does the project not comply with the new state regulations? First, the driveways, for driveways that are more than 800 feet, a turnout is required for every 400 feet. There's no turnout within the first 400 feet of Runyon Canyon Road. And second, the gates that are there are not 2 feet wider than the traffic lane. The city is making a huge error here by saying that the new state regulations don't apply. They do, and because you have failed to analyze them, you cannot make the required findings for the entitlements. We urge you to either grant the appeal or, at a minimum, continue this so that LAFD can review this for compliance.
Thank you. That concludes the appellants. Is the applicant here? Okay, the applicant, only one applicant, right? So 3 minutes?
I request 5 minutes in total because that's the amount you gave the appellants.
I'm going to turn to my city attorney, how that works.
The applicants should get equal time to what the appellants had.
Okay, thank you. 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon, council members. I'm Sherry Bonstall from Jeffer Mangles, and I represent the applicant, Manny Valencia, and the Valencia family. I am here with the architect, the EIR preparer, the community outreach consultant, the fire safety expert, Chief Mike Dyer is here to answer your questions, and the other consultants that will all be available to answer any questions that you have. The project was approved by the Mulholland DRB and unanimously approved by the South Valley APC in a process that took 9 years, 8 public hearings, and 25 community meetings. The project includes the construction of a 5,700 square foot home that is embedded under the ridgeline, covered with native planting and shaped to match the contours of the hillside. The project is minimally visible from the park, and hikers can barely see it only from the west side, and it is not visible at all from Mulholland Drive. The existing 2,000 square foot Headley Henley House is the historic cultural monument that will be retained and preserved as an accessory structure. In the DRB hearing, the owner provided 3 options: locating the home on top of the ridge, at the bottom of the ridge, or underneath the ridge. And the DRB specifically selected underneath the ridge as the location because of the visibility of the home, even though it would include additional grading, because the grading could be located on site and would not require off-site hauling. The opponents' images in their letter are of the original project. The original project was over 11,000 square foot in size. The reduced project, which is what was approved, is the 5,700 square foot home, which is significantly smaller. Manny Valencia and his family did extensive outreach because it was very important to them that our neighbors understood and supported the project. They submitted over 150 support letters that were all located within 2 miles of the property. Manny prepared an environmental impact report and prepared every single study that was requested by the DRB. And these included studies for wildlife corridor, biology, noise impacts, light impacts, geotech and seismic impacts, and wildfire analysis. The EIR concluded that there was no significant impact that was not mitigated in the project. The project fully complies with the fire codes and the regulations. We submitted a separate document for you, and this is a letter on February 9th. And as part of that letter, we identified the fire analysis that was done in the EIR. We attached the updated LAFD approvals, which were signed off in May of 2024. And then we attached a letter from Mike Dyer, who was a fire chief and is now retired, analyzing the property as he had walked through last week after the fires to confirm the fire safety of the property. And that is an exhibit to the letter. We also attached the supplemental correction sheet for very high fire severity zone, all of which we will have to comply with as part of LADBS sign-off. And as part of that, they will require compliance with the fire code and sign-off by LAFD. So the project currently has 3 fire hydrants that are surrounding the property. The LAFD determined that additional fire hydrant was necessary. It would be located at the bottom of the driveway. It would be usable for anywhere in the park, and it would maintain a pressure of 4,000 gallons per minute. This is the amount of pressure that the LAFD determined would be required and was again signed off in 2024. We are compliant with the fire code requirements in terms of access. Our driveway will be 20 feet wide, and at the end of the driveway before the homes, there will be a 60-foot hammerhead turnaround that is fully compliant with fire code regulations and will provide greater fire access than we have today. The home itself will be entirely sprinkled. It'll be constructed out of concrete, and it will be a much safer location for the existing homeowners than the old historic house. The project does not need to comply with the street width regulations in the very high fire severity zone under the new code as outlined by the city and as outlined in our letter. And then to be more specific, for the construction traffic management plan, it will limit the impact on the neighbors. It will require workers to be shuttled off-site, and it will ensure that Runyon Canyon Road is open at all times for hikers during the entire construction. So we request that you uphold our approval, deny the appeal, and we're here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Next, we're going to move to public comment. I've got a number of names. I'll read several of them, and if I call your name, please go ahead and line up on the side. We'll start with Chris Parker, Michael Dyer, Stacy Henderson, Manny Valencia, Elisa Valencia, Clinton Valencia, Samantha Valencia, Santos Martinez, Brian Smith, and Ruben Minikanov. We'll start there, and then I will read, some of these names are repeated, but then I'll read the rest of the names after that. And you each have 1 minute, and please state your name and
I'm
the floor is
Stacy
yours.
Henderson, Vice President at Kaja Environmental Services, the preparer of the EIR on behalf of the city. The EIR comprehensively analyzed 20 topics and determined that all impacts would be less than significant. I wanted to highlight some of the analyses and conclusions from the EIR. With respect to wildfire, the EIR fully analyzed impacts with respect to wildfires and determined that the project would not exacerbate wildfire risks, and all impacts were determined to be less than significant. The analysis included an evaluation of information provided by the LAFD, including an approved fire hydrant and access plan. Regarding fuel modification, the project applicant currently maintains approximately 2.88 acres of fuel modification zones, and this would increase an additional 0.59 acres as part of the project. Regarding construction, the EIR included a full analysis of construction impacts, including those with respect to air quality, noise, and traffic, and all impacts were determined to be less than significant.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Michael W. Dyer. I'm the retired fire chief of the Santa Barbara County Fire Department, retired chief deputy of the Los Angeles County Fire Department. I was asked by the homeowner to come out and look at his house last weekend and give my impressions of the property. I reviewed all the planning documents, and I would tell you I wouldn't be here at all if the fire department hadn't approved the water and the access to this property previously. I would not be here. What I found was the fire department water and access requirements are appropriate. The fuel modification plan that's going to be required, the homeowner will be able to do an enhanced fuel modification plan, and the building materials are going to be state-of-the-art, non-combustible building materials that will help the house survive during a wildfire. And that includes venting, non-combustible siding, non-combustible roof. And I'm here for any questions later on. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hello, my name is Chris Parker. I'm the CEO of Pacific Crest Consultants, a land use and permitting firm with a 50-year history here in Los Angeles. Manny and his family hired my firm 9 years ago, almost 10 years ago, to help him with this project. Since then, I've been to dozens of public hearings with him and helped him as we have gotten feedback from the community and turned it around into the project that was approved by both the Mulholland Design Review Board and the South Valley APC, and that you see in front of me. Every time we went to one of these meetings, afterwards, Manny would say, how are we going to address these concerns? How are we going to make this project better? And to that specifically, I want to talk about the 5 entitlement requests. It was suggested by one of the appellants that, that this should have been a by right project. That would make it a better project. It's quite the opposite of that. The entitlements that we requested actually make this a less impactful project to the community and to the park. It's a distinction that the Mulholland Design Review Board realized, and hopefully you will too. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Manny Valencia, and my family and I live at 3003 Runyon Canyon Road. We're the applicants. From the moment we started this entitlement, the community and environment have been our #1 priority. And 10 years later, it remains the same. For 8 years, we have worked with MDRB to ensure that the home complies with community standards, site and park requirements, environmental guidelines, and the PSP compliance. We recognize and respect the concerns of the public, which is why we have revised the project several times to ensure it meets the community standards. This is a family home where my family and I hope to create lasting memories for the rest of our lives. We humbly ask for your approval and support. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good evening. My name is Clinton Emmanuel Valencia. My father first spoke to me about his dream for a generational home when I was 10 years old. I'm 21 now, and somehow my bed is still the upstairs couch. While for everyone, Runyon's a place to come and hike, for me it's a place with my greatest childhood memories. For 10 years, I've grown, matured, and witnessed the animosity of individuals who oppose our Project Carry. For 10 years, I've watched my dad go through revision after revision after revision to satisfy the needs of the community. For 10 years, I've watched my dad not give up on his dream to give his family the home that we deserve. Runyon Canyon means the absolute world to me. This project does not impact the environment, nor does it disrupt the peace of the community, and if it did, I would not be speaking here with you all now. On behalf of my love for it, I'm advocating deeply for this project's approval. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Before the next speaker, Mr. Herman, I'm going to warn you, you've stood up several times giving the finger and other things, and I find that distracting. So please know if you stand up and wave your arms and gesticulate again, you will be removed. This is your only warning. Okay, go ahead, ma'am.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Alicia Valencia, and 3003 Runyon has been our home for over a decade. As a family, we have grown. Our work from home needs have changed. Living in the existing home has proven to be challenging due to its limited space. But most importantly, my elderly mom, who can no longer drive, will be coming to live with us once the home is completed. Runyon is more than just a place we call home. It's a community where we witness and participate in acts of kindness and support. As a family, we will continue to make a positive difference here. We love Runyon and humbly ask for your approval and support. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good evening, City Council members. My name is Samantha Valencia, and I'm a resident of 3003 Runyon and the daughter of Manny and Alicia Valencia. While I work in finance now, last June I received my bachelor's degree from UCLA, where I studied neuroscience. If there's anything that studying the human brain has taught me, it's that we have these psychological biases that prevent us from digesting the complete objective truth. While there's very little I can do to change the opinion you walked in the door with, I do want to remind you that in times of disagreement, we're all naturally inclined to view others' opinions as categorically incorrect, especially when those opinions affect our own interest. So I ask that today in your decision, you leave politics out of the equation and you look at what's objectively being proposed. This is a family home, a place where we buried our first dog, Winston, and a place that I hope to bring my future kids to enjoy the same nooks and crannies of the property that I once did. It's been 10 years of countless committees emerging out of thin air and finding another dire reason we can't build. I truly believe we are the best stewards to take care of this property, and with that, I ask you for this approval.
Thank you. Next speaker.
My name is Randall Kleiser, and I'm the only other resident of Runyon Canyon. I've lived there for 40 years, and I met Manny about 10 years ago when he started this process, and I've gone to all the various tribunals he's had, and I saw the plans. They're beautiful. It fits right into the hillside. It doesn't cause any problems at all, and I really believe that Manny is part of the American dream. He came here from Mexico. He became very successful, and he deserves a chance to build his home. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good evening. My name is Ruben Minyahanov. I'm a longtime resident of West Hollywood and a hiker at Runyon Canyon Park. I'm here to express my support to Valencia Home Project. The property owners have followed all city regulations and guidelines and have dedicated nearly a decade to providing studies to the city. Their design is beautiful and the home blends in with the natural landscape. The Valencia have shown great respect and care for both the environment and our community. I respectfully ask you for your approval of their project. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to read some additional names. If I've already read your name, don't worry about it. Santos Martinez, Byron Smith, Mike Sullivan, Travis Lesane, Vincent Tolliver, Michael Dyer, Marion Dodge, Amin Ayob, John Guile, Stacy Brenner, Ron Mason, and Stacy Brenner. So some of these are repeats, but now I've read all the names. So anybody at this point who is here to speak on this issue, just feel free to line up on the side if you haven't spoken already. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, City Council. My name is Brian Smith. I'm a longtime resident of Hollywood. I frequently walk and run Runyon Canyon. I met Manny Valencia and his family. The Valencias warmly welcomed me to the property and showed me the plans highlighting where the new home will be situated in relation to the existing historic home. Now, personally, I've been fortunate to know them, and I can assess that they're inspiring characters and respect for the park. They have a deep love for the park and to the history. The Valencia family's thoughtful actions and consideration for others are evident in the many years and the delays and adjustments to their plans. I believe the intentions are for all the good, and I propose that we allow them to move forward with building their new home. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good afternoon. My name is Santos Martinez, and I am one of the civil engineers for this project. The project has been carefully designed to minimize visual impact. Access concerns have been addressed through a construction monitoring program, DOT-reviewed access, and on-site parking and staging plan. Fire safety measures include a new hydrant in full compliance with state regulations. Environmental sustainability has been a priority with a green roof, pervious driveways, and a minimal impervious area. Drainage will naturally integrate into the park using LID without structural BMPs. Grading will result in no export. The homeowner has gone through great efforts to keep bulk cut on site to avoid disturbing the park goers with the truck traffic. The homeowners has gone through great lengths to respect the environment, park goers, and for the last 8 years adjust the project to account for the community's feedback. We respectfully request your approval. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Next speaker.
Hi, I'm Travis Lesane. I'm a longtime resident of Nichols Canyon and a friend of Manny's. I've spoken at 3 of these hearings for him. The family, they've shown a deep respect for Runyon Canyon. This project does not impede the structure of Runyon Canyon. It actually enhances it. What else do I want to say about Manny and his family? Just their commitment to this, just their steadfastness. And they've complied with every concern and issue that was brought to them over this almost 10-year period. So I'm here on their behalf just to say, you know, to give my full-throated support and hope that you guys approve this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm John Guile. Good to see all of you, and thanks for your good work. I'm the founder of the Runyon Canyon Foundation, and I'm also a neighbor of Runyon Canyon. I live about 3 blocks away from this project, and I just wanted to say I support the project, and I support the building of this home. The Valencia family have been guardians of the park. I know the three gentlemen who spoke in opposition. They're very good lawyers. I have not seen them in the park, but I can tell you, since we started the foundation, the Valencia family has helped us preserve the existing, the adjoining land, the 50 acres to the west of their home. They've helped us in the park with lost dogs, lost children, and they are true great neighbors. The park is better because of this property, and knowing what they've done, you can walk by and see the beautiful landscaping, the beautiful tender care, and the great amount of resources that have been put in by this family to preserve Runyon Canyon. That will continue. So I support this, and I appreciate, again, all the good work that you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the Plum Committee. My name is Vincent Tolliver, and it is my special privilege to be here this afternoon in support of the matter before you, 3003 Runyon Canyon. Manny, beyond the 10-year journey that brings us all here today, I want to share two things with you about my friend Manny Valencia. One, his word. Two, his affinity for people and for humanity. Manny is a man of his word. His word is impeccable. You can set your watch by it. You don't have to second guess it, which speaks volumes to his integrity and his character. Manny also has a deep care and affinity for people. Here's the thing. I could talk to Manny 24 hours straight, and it still wouldn't be enough. Why? Because this guy has a wisdom that is both reassuring and comforting. I urge you to support this matter with all deliberate speed, and I encourage you to vote enthusiastically and unanimously. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good afternoon, Chair and esteemed members. My name is Amin Ayub. I'm the architect of 3003 Runyon Canyon. The project represents a decade of thoughtful refinement, and it stands as a model for responsive hillside residential design. Located within Runyon Canyon Park is an earth berm home, sculptured and sculpted into the landscape to minimize impact. Sharing the same property as the Lloyd Wright Historical Monument, the proposed residence has been carefully reduced and refined over the years through extensive community input. The home is positioned on the western-facing slope, hidden from Mulholland Scenic Overlook. It is designed to the highest environmental structural standards, incorporating fire-resistant materials, advanced seismic engineering, and passive cooling strategies, carefully calibrated vis-a-vis the site's natural conditions. Walkable vegetative roofs further enhance fire mitigation and sustainability. The home is a result of collaborative process, balancing the architecture, environmental responsibility, and the community engagement.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker.
I'm the landscape architect, and the intent of this landscape project is to blend the landscape harmoniously with the home. You could think of it in terms of we're peeling back the earth, tucking in the house, and covering it back over with the landscape. So in a sense, the house will disappear. We're going to do this with a mosaic of plantings that blend with the natural environment, and also to create fuel modification zones. And these fuel modification zones will have within the first two zones will be irrigation systems that will establish the new plantings, as well as provide for fuel suppression for future wildfires. I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker. Welcome.
Good afternoon. I'm Marion Dodge. I support the appeals of the approval of this project. The biggest problem is that a private residence does not belong in the middle of a city park. This project proposes building a second residence in the middle of Runyon Canyon Park, compounding the problem. The recent fire in Runyon Canyon demonstrates vividly another reason why this project is inappropriate for this location. This is about a park, a public park, not about a family. One only has to review the number of major variances required to build this project to see that it is not a good project for this location. I strongly urge Plum to reject this project now. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Plum Chair and Plum members. My name is Stacy Brenner with Brenner Consulting Group. We performed the community outreach for this project, and I just want to reiterate what has already been said here today. We did extensive outreach. We have more than 150 supporters of this project. We've done more than 25 community meetings and hearings, of which 7 of those included the Mulholland Design Review Board, APC approval. We've met with various groups that are actually here today as well. And nothing of this project has changed since we've met with any of these supporters or these organizations. It's still the same project that's in front of you today. Our firm is also doing the permitting for this project, and I will say that we have to be compliant with LADBS, LAFD, and all the other public departments, public works departments, as well as planning for this project. So we're going to be fully compliant with all the permitting that's going to be necessary for the permit issuance. And I just want to say thank you for your time, and we hope that you will support staff's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I believe we've exhausted all public comment. Making sure, is there anyone here who had wished to speak on this who has not been able to speak? If you are, come forward. Seeing no one, we'll now move to committee discussion. Council members with questions and comments, and we'll start with Councilwoman Rahman, as this is in your district.
Thank you so much. And I do want to thank all of the members of the community who came, and particularly the members of the Valencia family. I appreciate your sentiments. And I do just want to say, you know, Manny, your story, as someone who came to this country, I'm an immigrant myself, it means a lot to me to hear about your efforts here in building this house for you and your family. I also do want to appreciate the length of time that you have all spent wrangling the city's archaic and outdated planning system. And none of us in this room created this system. It is extraordinarily laborious to bring projects forward. And I do just want to say that in much of my work, particularly in building more multifamily and affordable housing here in the city, I'm trying to reduce the kind of red tape that we put in front of builders as we think about trying to meet the needs for housing, the most essential thing for a city, for its residents, for people to thrive. So, you know, I wanted to just start off by acknowledging the length of time that you've spent on this, the extraordinary process that you've undertaken, and how frustrating it can be to go through these processes. That being said, I do have a number of questions because of the scale and scope of the project that I would just love for planning to be able to answer. I was wondering if we could start with just, can you talk about, what's the history of the projects that have been at this site? Was there other buildings that were proposed for this site before this one? And if you can talk in brief about that, I think that would be really helpful for this committee to understand.
There have been previous iterations of this project that have gone through design review, planning review, all from the same applicant over the past, as we said, 7 to 10 years, all resulting in the reduced project that is before you today, that the South Valley Area Planning Commission did approve. Originally, a nearly 11,000 square foot structure is now half its size at the 5,700 that you see before you. Was there proposed buildings for this same plot before the current applicant brought it forward? Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. I want to talk about the reduced size. What is the total cumulative area of the project, including the basement, the parking area, and any storage areas?
So it's a 5,500 square foot home with an attached 600 square foot 2-car garage, fully underground 3,000 square foot basement. The total residential floor area is the 5,700 square feet.
But the basement is also residential area, right? Not under your regulations, but it's like livable spaces with windows on one side? No?
It's completely underground.
It's completely underground?
Go ahead.
Oh, and just, this is Blake Lamb for the record. So the city has a definition of what constitutes a basement versus what is livable floor area, and it has to do with how much of the basement is daylit. And it's been determined that this basement does not comprise livable residential floor area.
Got it. And what is the average size for homes in this area? Do you know?
Much larger than the 5,700 square feet in the Mulholland specific plan.
Based on the recent, well, the average size of homes is much larger than 57 across which area?
I apologize, Councilmember Rowan. Can you repeat your question? Sorry, we were trying to get information for your prior question, so I didn't hear your latest question.
Oh, I was just saying, what is the average size for homes in this area? Just so we get a sense of the scale of the project and the size in the context of the neighborhood that it's in.
Okay, if you give us a couple of minutes, we'll get that information. We're pulling
Okay, great.
it up as part of the original application.
And, you know, I think there's obviously been a, recent wildfire activity in the city, which has been startling, alarming. Is the planning department, has recent activity made the planning department think about kind of changes that might be needed or different ways to consider wildfire risk and mudslide risk and wildfire and mudslide management going forward? Is that something that the department is thinking about or considering as a result of what happened recently?
Well, as part of the environment, this is Melina Zasajian with the Planning Department. As part of the environmental process review, there is, in recent years, the state has added wildfires as something to be considered.
Who has added that?
The state has added that for environmental reviews for statewide. So although this EIR was done before that was added to the EIR checklist, there was a different component that had to address wildfires and due to fire services, sorry. And throughout the whole public process, there's been a number of different comments, especially you've heard today as well. Some of the commenters saying that the project doesn't comply with state fire requirements or with local ordinances. So there's been a lot of fire department involvement in this project and a number of reports, especially some that have been submitted by the applicant to the council file that demonstrate the resiliency of the structure in terms of fire.
Got it. I want to talk a little bit about the variances and deviations from the existing specific plan that were approved as part of this project. Is this number of deviations and the extent of the deviations that were approved, is that standard for a single-family home project in the hillsides? These are substantial deviations.
Claudia Rodriguez, Senior City Planner for the Planning Department. So the Mulholland specific plan has specific regulations as it relates to projects that are considered within the inner quarter, which are the properties closest to Mulholland. And then there are properties that are adjacent, which would be the outer corridor. There are also different features such as streamlines and ridge lines that have been identified on maps that were adopted as part of the original ordinance when that ordinance was passed. And so those ridge lines are part of the map, and this property happens to fall within one of those identified ridge lines.
Right.
We
So
also,
just to be clear for everybody here who may not have Mulholland in their district, the ridge lines are like the most ecologically sensitive area that the city is trying to preserve and protect access to and kind of environmental aspects of. So please continue.
So the requests are based on the, some of the requests came in place based on feedback from the Mulholland Design Review Board as it relates to, they didn't, obviously, the original design was to place it above the ridge, which, that was not the design review board did not like that, so they recommended for it to be embedded the way that it is currently embedded, which also increased the amount of grading. So that needed to be included as part of the environmental impact report analysis. The specific plan exception for the specific plan did come in place because of its location to the ridge line. It would be within a 50-foot from the top of the ridge to the top of the structure, is within 50 feet. And let me go through the other entitlements. The other entitlements would be project permit compliance, which would mean it complies with the remaining regulations of the specific plan. And then the design review board review would mean that it went to the Mulholland Design Review Board, where they condition the project to further meet design guidelines.
So I want to talk a little bit about these variances because in my understanding, again, I'm new to this committee, and I don't have any history as a planner in the city, so I just want to make sure I'm understanding. When you grant a variance especially from a specific plan in a hillside area, specific plan is supposed to be the most rigorous planning document that we have in the city. It's designed to limit construction, limit scale, limit intervention as much as possible. It is difficult to get a variance, and you have to often show hardship in order to get a variance from the plan. And so I have a couple of questions about the grading, for example. So 28,000 cubic yards of grading are being allowed for this project. So just for comparison, for the hillside construction regulations, a project would get about 6,000 cubic yards, I think, and then under the traditional Mulholland design guidelines, I think projects are allowed 1,000 cubic yards. So this is a variance of 28 times what the guidelines normally allow. So I'm curious about why. I mean, this is, I have, like I said, I'm struggling with this project. I really am, because I want people to be able to build in Los Angeles. I want people to be able to build their homes. I want people to be able to, engage with the city and have it be a rational, time-limited process. That's what people should expect. That's what they deserve. But I'm struggling with the level to which we varied from what the regulations are in those regulations that we put in place for the Design Review Board and the Mulholland Specific Plan. Those are regulations basically that are designed to preserve the environmental nature of that area, the delicate nature of that area, the risks of building in those areas. It's designed to mitigate all of those risks. What justifies a variance of 28 times what is in the plan in this case? Like, on what basis are we able to make that kind of determination? I understand what you're saying. It was on the top of the hill, and then it was moved to another place, and so this was to accommodate that change in the design, but it still doesn't take away from the fact that it's an enormous difference from what is traditionally allowed in this kind of space. And we deal with projects like this all the time,
Before we answer the question, this is once again Claudia Rodriguez with Department of City Planning. I'm going to go ahead and pass it to Katie to answer your prior question as it relates to the average size of structures in relation to the subject site.
So when we do a design review board review in our initial staff report, we did analyze a neighborhood compatibility. According to what was proposed, a proposed project at 5,700 square feet had a 0.07% floor area ratio, given the size of the lot. Nearby homes have an average of 4,125 square feet and an FAR of 16.25%. Additionally, estate properties were analyzed, with 3 properties in the area measuring an average of 8,943 square feet and a 3.1% FAR.
Okay.
Councilwoman Rahman, can I, Mr. Lee is on a time, he's going to have to leave us. Can I go briefly to Mr. Lee, and I will go back to you in a moment. But Mr. Lee, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just curious, we heard some Testimony from the public regarding the size of the driveway. That seems to be a big point of contention. Has LA Fire looked at this to make sure it's compliant within LA and California requirements with the fire codes?
Yes, this is Claudia Rodriguez again with Department of City Planning. One of the attachments that the applicant's team did submit into the council file for the record does show an updated plan with the updated stamp from our LA Fire Department fire hydrant and access dated May 31st, 2024. The map does identify the location of proposed new fire hydrant, an alternative new fire hydrant location, as well as widening the existing driveway to a 20-foot width to allow for a turnaround for a fire truck to be able to access the site.
Okay, so it's always been at 17, and now it's going to be required then move to 20?
Yes.
Okay, so also, you said there's placement of fire hydrants. So when there's fire hydrants, I read somewhere about like a wider width that we have to go to like 28. The way it was described, the fire hydrants aren't actually on the road. They're like kind of at the bottom of the hill. That doesn't affect the width of this street, or do you not know?
Yeah, I'm not, because we're not the fire department, I don't know that exact regulation, but what I do know from all the years working with the city and working in projects in the hillside is that all projects within the hillside are required by code to go to the fire department, and we do not approve
I'm assuming the fire
access.
department signed off,
Yes,
so
and
that's
there
all
is a stamp that is reflected on the map that they submitted.
Okay, thank you very much. That's the only question.
And before we go, Ms. Ram, just to follow up on his question about because it was stated that the road had to be 20 feet according to the state law, the entirety of the road. Are you saying it is 20 feet, or it would have to be increased to 20 feet?
Based on, and we can also ask the applicant to clarify, but based on the most recent submittal in an attachment that they submitted to the record on February 9th, 2025, they do show an updated map that shows the widening of the driveway to, widening an existing driveway to 20 feet in width. That would allow for
And
a
is it just
wider
the
turnaround.
driveway, or does the entire road have to be 20 feet?
So per the current plans, the applicant on the site, the driveway is 20 feet, but the roadway leading up to the site is not always 20 feet within the full width.
Okay, so a road that is not 20 feet in its entirety, does that mean that it's out of compliance with the state law? Or
My
with the-
understanding is no. That's okay.
Okay, so
But
you're saying
we-
that the
we-
law does not require the road to be 20 feet?
Yeah, we may want to have the applicant respond in more detail, because they've
Okay,
been
we
researching.
can, if the applicant is here, we can have the applicant come forward. And then, Ms. Rahman, I'll turn it back to you. Sorry, I was just following up on the question there.
Yes, this is Sherry Bonsall from Jeffrey Mangles. So the new state fire regulations identify that roads that are newly constructed must be 20 feet in width, and that would apply only to the new construction of roads and not to existing roads. There are a number of roads in the hillside areas that are not 20 feet wide, and the procedure in the city of LA is to do a zoning administrator determination to ensure that there is fire safety access to those properties. So those are not impacted under the law. In addition, it specifically defines roads as a street that has 4 or more homes on it. This street only has 2 homes on it, and it's only ever had 2 homes. And it has a deemed approved private street. It was deemed approved by the city of LA back in 1993. And so it complies with all of the regulations that were in effect at the time in 1993. In addition, the state fire regulations have an exemption for any properties that had parcel maps or tract maps prior to 1991. This location had a tract map prior to, or parcel map prior to 1991, as did most of the homes in the hillside area. And so it is not required that this street be widened to 20 feet wide, but it will have to go through fire department review to ensure access from the street. And the fire department already did that as part of the EIR, attached to the EIR as exhibits I-1 and I-2. And this is back from 2018. The fire department did a review, determined that the streets were compliant and required specific size for the driveway itself. And then they re-reviewed that in 2024. Okay, and so the state currently doesn't require that the...
Your contention is that it's grandfathered in, essentially? That the new requirement would be that it would have to be, for safety, it would have to be 20 feet. But if I understand you correctly, you're saying because this is grandfathered in, the new safety standard does not apply.
Correct. And it wouldn't apply to all of the homes in the hills on streets that were narrower than 20
new
feet.
homes, obviously grandfathered in homes, but this is a new home, correct?
So this is there's an existing home on the property, and we're building an addition, essentially a new structure on the property. So we will not have more, the density will not increase, because the existing home is going to become an accessory structure, and the new home is going to be constructed. I mean, so there will only still be 2 homes and 2 residences on the road after completion of the project.
I hear you. Thank you. And this is a question, it seems to me that what I'm hearing is there's a difference of opinion as to the legality in terms of what the applicant and the appellant have said about this road. And so I don't know if this is something we can ask the city attorney to report back on, because there's no way for me to be able to judge that. But what I've heard is a clear difference from what, and it's a factual question. So this is not a interpretive question. This is something that our city attorneys can get to the bottom of, and if they're able to do that, it'd be great. Otherwise, I'm going to turn it back.
Yeah, the APC made a determination on that, and the city attorney reviewed it as part of issuing the letter of determination. So the findings for that are already in the staff report.
So, just so I'm clear, just yes or no, the road that is being constructed, the roads that are being constructed by this development will be 20 feet. The roads that are surrounding are 17. I mean, by...
I think, let me see if I heard it wrong. What I heard her say was that the driveway will be 20 feet, but that the road remains substandard at 17 feet.
Right.
So the road is not being reconstructed.
Correct. Okay. I mean, my understanding, I don't know. I mean, in past planning, we have the planning department here, when a house is built, do we then require the developer then to fix all the different roads around? No, right? I mean, so just the one going up, it's 20 feet, so a fire truck can turn around, make that round. The roads around it, yeah, 17 feet. I mean, we have substandard roads throughout the city of Los Angeles, and if someone builds a home, I don't think we require them to rebuild all the different roads around them, correct?
Correct. So yes, our understanding of the state code and from conversations with the fire department is that as proposed, the road will be compliant with the state requirements.
Okay.
And this is Blake Lamb, also just to add, in the city, vacant vacant hillside lots are regularly developed with new homes on substandard streets.
Right. That's okay. That's what. So.
Okay. Councilwoman Brahman, floor is back to you.
I mean, really, we can just go back to the original question of the grading variance and just the enormity of the variance granted. Again, I want to go back to how we think about specific plans. Specific plan variances are usually granted because of hardships faced by the applicants, and also because there need to be minor adjustments from the specific plan in order to kind of make a project work. Again, we deal with it on Ventura, we've dealt with it in the hillsides a lot. We deal with hillside development all the time, but this is a much larger intervention than I have seen in my experience there. And it is in a place which is not just a ridgeline, it is maybe one of the most prominent ridgelines in the entire city. It's one of the most well-known parks and ridgelines in the entire city. And so I'm just curious about kind of the extent of the variance and, you know, what justifies that in the approvals that were given so far.
Katie Knudsen for the record. Just to clarify, this the grading is not, the approval of the grading is not through a zone variance. It's actually through a zoning administrator's determination, which has different requirements and regulations, which do not require us as planning to make hardship findings. With that being said, the by right amount of grading was 6,600 cubic yards per by right regulations. The specific plan does allow per section 5C 4 square feet per square foot of lot area, and that means that the project and the applicant would be limited to 14,006 cubic yards of grading for the 197,435 square foot lot. As we note in our initial report, that it requires the 28,012 cubic yards, which is double, because the project is proposing grading that is cut and fill. Nothing is being removed. No haul route is required. They are keeping all of the grading, all of the soil on site.
And this is Blake Lamb, just to also further explain. So the specific plan in this case, the specific plan is actually less restrictive than the zoning code for grading. As you heard Katie said, I think something like 14,000 square feet per the specific plan to be graded, but per code it was something like 6,000 square feet. So the application has to comply with the most restrictive regulation. So in this case, the code supersedes the specific plan. So they are asking for a zoning administrator's determination from the zoning code grading regulation, which, as Katie mentioned, does not have a hardship finding. It has different findings that we have to make and that the South Valley Area Planning Commission was able to make.
And what are those findings?
While they're looking for that smoliness sedging, I just also wanted to note that, you know, for hillside areas, as you know, there's a lot of different competing priorities. So, for example, retention of the prominent ridge lines versus retention of trees versus there's a historic resource on site, so protection of the setting that's around that versus minimizing grading. So there's sometimes some of those regulations kind of go against each other, and you have to figure out a good way to balance some of those things. So I think that was the intent of the project here, is to balance. There would be more, there's alternatives that could have been proposed that were studied, where grading would have been less. However, then that impacts the ridgeline more or exposes more of the building, like the basement is submerged, so less of the west elevation is visible from Runyon Canyon Park. So it was different kind of design considerations to try to balance those objectives.
This is Blake Lamb. I can read these findings that are required for the zoning administrator determination. 1, the project will enhance the built environment in the surrounding neighborhood or will perform a function or provide a service that is essential or beneficial to the community, city, or region, which the South Valley APC found was the case. The project's location, size, height, operations, and other significant features will be compatible with and will not adversely affect or further degrade adjacent properties, the surrounding neighborhood, or the public health, welfare, and safety. Again, the South Valley APC found that to be the case. 3, the project substantially conforms with the purpose, intent, and provisions of the general plan, the applicable community plan, and the specific plan, which again, they found it to be in conformance with the general intent. And then the project request is in conformity with public necessity, convenience, general welfare, and good zoning practice, and that the action will be in substantial conformance with the various elements and objectives of the general plan. And then a grading specific requirement, grading in excess of the maximum by right grading quantities listed in subparagraph, et cetera, of the code, but in no event shall quantities exceed the true value of 500 cubic yards plus the numeric value equal to 5% of the total lot area. So it's a calculation here, and the calculation was done in the staff report, and we were able to make those findings.
Okay, I mean, again, having dealt with a number of these projects, I think I found the scale of the findings to, the scale of the deviance from what is traditionally approved under these regulations to be fairly large, and left me with significant questions about, two kinds of things in light of recent events in particular, which is additional wildfire, but also mudslide risk as a result of these kinds of interventions into our hillsides. Something that we are worried about in advance of Thursday's rainstorm, putting up sandbags and, looking at the burn scar of the Sunset Fire, which was in Runyon Canyon, and trying to understand how will new projects, how will existing projects, how will construction routes impact our ability to keep residents safe. And so, Councilmember Blumenfield, I appreciate, again, every input that we've heard today, but I would really like to continue this until additional study can be prepared on wildfire and mudslide risks, that it can be reviewed by the city and reviewed by LAFD to determine if this project will cause or exacerbate significant impacts to health and safety and biological resources. And I also want to make sure that any construction management plan that comes out of this project will also not add to risks related to wildfires, safety and emergency access, and other issues that have become significantly more prominent, particularly in light of recent events and looking ahead to bad weather ahead. That would be what I would feel more comfortable with, and I know that there is some deadlines related to this project that
the deadline, I believe, is the 24th. So although if you work with the applicant and get their consent, you can go beyond that. But for this immediate moment, what is it? Today is the 11th. Let us certainly prepare to move with your recommendation, and we'll continue this as a recommendation. And then if you could meet with the applicant to see if you're working on these issues, you need more time to get a continuance by consent for a little bit further time. So, colleagues, any other comments or questions?
Excuse me, can you turn my mic?
What's that?
Oh, it's on, okay. Sorry, Chair Catherine Phelan, City Attorney. The appeals will be deemed denied if we run out of time. So you may want to ask the applicant to come up and see if they're willing to continue that deadline now.
Okay.
Or you could recommend to not certify the EIR to council.
Okay, so the applicant is here, and I'll ask the applicant if you're willing to continue this.
Yes, so we are always willing to work with the council office. We are always willing to address issues of concern. We are willing to continue this matter, but we would like very specific direction in terms of what specific studies need to be done and the amount of time before we can come back to council. So I submitted a letter dated the 9th that summarized all of the analysis that we had done on the project related to fire safety. This included all of the codes that will need to be signed off of as part of the building permit review. It included the supplemental plan check, all the provisions for a very high fire severity zone. It included analysis by Mike Dyer, who's a fire chief, and reviewed the plans and the property. It included the already previously approved and signed off LAFD approvals from 2024, and it included an architect summary of every item that would contribute to fire safety. So, we are willing to prepare a report. If there's something very specific that you need, we would like to know about it so that we can include it in the report. And also, if there's any other report that you're requesting at this time, we would like to know, because we will immediately start these reports and would like to return to the council as soon as possible. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I don't know that we can give you a comprehensive list of those things at this point. I don't think that's realistic. The council office is going to have to do some work on that. But we do need to get a continuance to get us beyond, because our next meeting is the 25th. So if we do not, or the 24th, or the 25th, this item would be deemed denied without a continuance on the 24th. So in order to get us to those next meeting, we need to, at the very least, continue it to maybe March 25th, as a pick a date like that, and then we can work with the council office on getting the specific asks and a better beat on the date. But we do need to at least get consent for a date specific, correct?
So, yeah, if I could just make one intervention here. I'm very happy to, again, I just want to emphasize, I share applicants' frustration with the timelines that it takes to get approvals here in the city. So I'm very happy to commit to a shorter timeline, and we've already worked with you, we've been in touch with you, and so you can count on us to be communicative and to continue to engage with both the departments and with the applicants. I think my specific issue is really, I don't think the materials that you presented and the EIR that was done addresses some of the new wildfire risks that we've seen here in the city in light of recent events. And I want to make sure that we're able to address that. I think that's important as we go forward. Not just, I would say not just for this project, but for any project that we're looking at, but for this project specifically. And so that's what I would be asking for us to consider, a technical study that would address these new risks and a technical response from the departments on that study.
Yeah, and I should say, and I share a lot of your concerns. This is a lot of discretion, in terms of this. Obviously, the folks bought a medium-sized house knowing what it was. There's not an entitlement to have this much larger property. This is a very discretionary act that's being asked of this council to do something that's quite extraordinary in terms of the size and scope of a project like this. Even though the 3,000 foot below doesn't count as livable space, it is quite a large project in this area. Not saying it can't happen, but it's certainly, it's not a small thing. So I do want to see the results of what you're talking about. Obviously the councilwoman in the district has the most information, but it is something that's concerning to all of us to do something like this to the Santa Monica Mountains, which is a resource that the entire city relies on and shares. So with that, do you have a date specific that you wanted to move this to?
I leave it to you, Chairperson. We're happy to do the work it's going to take in order to move this forward. I just want to confirm that if we continue it to a later date, that the appeals will not be denied if we move past the. So
If we get consent right now and we continue it to a date, then it is not deemed denied unless we pass that date. So if we move it to, I don't know, at least April 1st or something, then that gives us 2 potential meetings, I believe, so that we have a chance to land this. If it's been a long road, I understand that, but certainly this part of the process is important as well. So without objection, we will, and do you consent to the April 1st deadline?
Yes, we consent to the April 1st deadline.
Okay, so to continuation to April 1st. So with the applicant's consent, is the recommendation that this.
Excuse me,
What?
Mr. Chair? Mr. Chair?
Is there, extending the time to April 1st? Okay, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry. If you can go ahead and submit something to clerk.plumcommittee, extending the time, please.
We consent to the Plum Committee extending the time until April 1st, 2025
Yes.
for this project.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay. Again, I'm new chairing this, so I don't have all the right terms there.
sorry,
So we're not continuing, we're extending the time to, and I turn to my attorney, make sure I'm saying all the words right. Okay.
Yeah, yes.
And is
Kathy Phelan,
that
works.
something we need to take a roll call on?
So the item has been continued to April 1st, 2025. Mr. Blumenfield?
Aye?
Ms. Hutt?
Yeah.
Mr. Nassarian? Yes.
I'm hearing that we're continuing to March 25th, but the time is extending to April 1st. Could you explain that?
So there's a meeting on March 25th, for this committee.
Okay.
And then the applicant is continuing it through April 1st. So we'll presumably have it in committee
I
on
see,
March 25th.
because we have to have council approve it afterwards,
Right.
which is why you need the additional time. Okay. Thank you. Apologize, folks, as we work through these.
So I'll call the roll again. Mr. Blumenfield?
Blumenfield, aye.
Ms. Hutt?
Aye.
Mr. Nasserian's absent, Mr. Lee's absent, and Ms. Rahman.
Yes.
So that item has been continued.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming in and for your comments. And
thank you, Chair, for your help.
Okay, what item is next?
Item 8 is next, sir. It's inclusive of the categorical exemption. This is an appeal filed by Supporters Alliance for Environmental Responsibility, SAFER, and they're appealing the environmental clearance, the categorical exemption for the construction of a new 8-story building, which will include 163 dwelling units. 18 units are reserved for extremely low-income households in CD10.
We'll start with the department report.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. This is David Nguyen with City Planning. Item 8 pertains to a CEQA appeal in conjunction with the approval of an 8-story residential development in the Koreatown neighborhood. The project will provide 163 dwelling units, including 18 units set aside for extremely low-income households. As a quick overview, the project was approved by the Director of Planning in August 2024. The project's site plan review determination was subsequently appealed by the Supporters Alliance for Environmental Responsibility, or SAFER. At its meeting of November 14, 2024, the City Planning Commission denied SAFER's appeal and sustained the Director of Planning's determination. The item before us today is a second appeal filed by SAFER with regards to the project's Class 32 categorical exemption from CEQA. The appellant provided in their application the same appeal points that were presented to CPC. SAFER claims that the project will have significant impacts on air quality and noise, and that the unusual circumstances and historical resources exceptions apply. After reviewing SAFER's appeal points, planning staff concludes that there is no merit to the appeal and that the Class 32 categorical exemption is an adequate and proper environmental clearance for this project. The appellant has not provided any substantial evidence that shows that the project will have significant air quality and noise impacts, or that the project will result in an adverse change to a historical resource. The project's environmental impacts were fully analyzed in the categorical exemption report, which was transmitted into the council file. It includes noise, air quality, and historical resources impacts analyses that all conclude that the project will not result in significant impacts. Therefore, planning recommends that the CEQA appeal be denied. Additional details related to the appeal points were addressed in the staff report that was submitted into the council file. I'm happy to address any questions you might have.
Great, thank you. Before we do that, we'll hear from the appellant, then the applicant, and then we have 3 members of the public. I'm going to read your names so you can come up forward and be prepared, and you can line up. Chase Preciado, Andrew H., and Andrew Brady. If for public comment, feel free to line up, and I assume you are the appellant, correct? Okay. The floor is yours. You have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon, Plum Committee. My name is Chase Preciado from Lazo Jury LLP. I am speaking on behalf of Supporters Alliance for Environmental Responsibility, or SAFER. SAFER respectfully requests that the committee grant SAFER's appeal of the infill exemption of the 638 South Barendo Street project. Instead, the committee should require preparation of an initial study followed by an MND or EIR. CEQA review is required because the project will significantly impact historic resources, air quality, noise, and indoor air quality. Thus, the project does not qualify for the exemption on its face, and the historical resources and unusual circumstances exceptions to the exemption apply. First, there is a fair argument that the project will significantly affect a historic resource, the Roseberry Building. Architectural historian Michael Corbett concludes that the project will substantially impair the building's historic significance. Also, in 2022, the city issued a report finding that the Roseberry Building was a historic resource under CEQA. Yet in 2024, the city issued a contradictory report finding that the building is not a historic resource. Both conclusions cannot be true. The 2022 report itself creates a fair argument that the building is a historic resource, so the exemption cannot apply. Second, environmental engineers Patrick Sutton and Yuan Tian of Baseline Environmental Consulting conclude that there is substantial evidence that the project will significantly affect air quality. The project will have adverse impacts related to air pollutant health risks. The cancer risk from the project's construction emissions of diesel particulate matter exceeds the applicable CEQA cancer risk threshold. The city did not discuss this impact. Third, Baseline concludes that the project's construction activities will significantly impact noise levels. During construction, the noise levels at sensitive receptors near the project site would exceed existing ambient noise levels by at least 5 decibels and range up to 80 decibels. Finally, industrial hygienist Francis Offerman concludes that the project will significantly affect indoor air quality. The project's long-term indoor formaldehyde emissions will expose its future residents to cancer risk exceeding a CEQA significance threshold. The city did not assess this impact. Thus, there is substantial evidence that the project will significantly impact air quality, noise, and indoor air quality. These impacts create an unusual circumstance precluding reliance on the exemption. For the reasons discussed here and in SAFER's written comments, SAFER requests that the committee grant its appeal and require CEQA review, including an MND or EIR. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have the applicant.
And I'm Andrew Brady, so that was the card I filled out. So I have no public comment. I'm here on behalf of the applicant.
Perfect. You have up to 3 minutes.
Thank you. Well, now I guess good evening, council members, members of the commission. My name is Andrew Brady of DLA Piper, here on behalf of the project applicant. This is yet another in a seemingly endless series of administrative appeals challenging housing projects by SAFER, which is an organization created by the Laguna Labor Union. This is 163 new units, 18 extremely low-income units on a vacant lot. This is the second appeal filed by SAFER against this project. This appeal was properly vetted and rejected by the Planning Commission. In the council file, there are a number of technical reports by the project's expert technical consultants, which demonstrate that the purported technical reports submitted by SAFER are completely fraudulent. They're not even based on these projects. These are the same technical reports they submit again and again and again to the city on all of the many projects they challenge. Sort of a copy and paste job where they take the name of the project and they put it in this, they call it a technical report and they submit it, has no basis in reality. And if you look at the technical reports in the file, demonstrate that these reports that SAFER submits actually sort of create a series of unrealistic assumptions that don't match reality, don't match this project, completely are engineered falsely to overstate risk to sort of support an unsupportable conclusion that a housing development project is going to have a significant public health and safety impact. It's simply not the case. The arguments about the historic building, there's a historic memo and a historic report. They falsely state that the city has concluded that the Roseberry building, which is adjacent to the project site, is not historic. That's not what the report says. The report indicates that this is a historic building. This project's just not going to negatively impact it. And if you look at what their argument actually is, it's that this project was actually on the back side of the Roseberry building. It's the back of house side. The other 3 sides are the really remarkable historic sides, not going to be touched, not going to be affected at all. The argument in their report is that by blocking light into the back of the building, it's going to have a significant impact on the historic building. It's a nonsensical argument. There's a detailed response from the Historic Resources Group, the project's historic consultant, shooting down all of the points raised in this appeal. This is an unfortunate tactic that this union keeps taking. They're holding up housing projects with all of these baseless appeals. It's really unfortunate. I don't know why they continue doing this, but this is yet another in the series of appeals that, again, same reports, completely baseless. So request that this committee reject the appeal, recommend that the council reject the appeal, and allow this project, providing 163 new units with 18 affordable units, to go forward and no longer be held up by a frankly frivolous appeal. And here to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Great, thank you. We'll start with Councilwoman Hutt. This project's in your district. I invite you to kick off the discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's my finding that the appeal challenging the original project approval is without merit. The arguments presented in the appeal do not demonstrate any significant errors in the original approval process, nor do they raise any substantial new information that will warrant overturning the initial determination. Therefore, after careful consideration, I move to deny the appeal and uphold the original project approval. The decision is based on the evidence presented, the applicable regulations, and the best interests of our community. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'm happy to second that motion. Colleagues, any additional comments or questions? Okay, the denial has been moved and seconded to deny the appeal and sustain the Planning Commission's determination. Let's call the roll.
Yes, Mr. Blumenfield.
Blumenfield, aye.
Ms. Hutt?
Aye.
Mr. Nasserian's absent, Mr. Lee's absent, and Ms. Rahman.
Oh, yes.
So that appeal is denied.
Okay, I believe we have one more item. Is that correct?
Yes, one more item.
All right, last item, folks.
Yes, item 9, this includes environmental clearance, the categorical exemption from CEQA, and an appeal by Sita Panosian, who's challenging the approval of the environmental clearance relative to the sale and dispensing of a full line of alcoholic beverages for on-site consumption in conjunction with a new restaurant cafe in CD 13.
Okay, if you could give us a very brief overview.
Good afternoon, Henry Chu of the Department of City Planning. This is an appeal of a CEQA clearance for a conditional use for alcohol within the ground floor restaurant that was heard by the Central Area Planning Commission. This was for a Class 1 categorical exemption, which is for an existing building. The project checks off all the boxes and the categorical exemption is appropriate. The conditional use is not further appealable. Staff recommends denial of the appeal.
Okay. Thank you. Is the appellant present to speak? Yes. Okay, if you could come forward.
Good afternoon. Thank you for this opportunity to speak on behalf of my family, my community, and my neighbors. This is a CEQA appeal of a proposed 230-seat bar and restaurant with 44 outdoor seats in a building located 5 feet from an elementary school and right next to a residential home, including mine, in which my family has lived in for over 50 years. The police opposed any alcohol sales whatsoever at this location, stating, due to the high disruptive incidents related to the area and subject premise, the quality of life issues experienced by residents daily, the strong opposition from community members, and in the best interest of Kingsley Elementary School students' body, the LAPD is opposed to the issuance of conditional use permit for this application. Our recommendation is based on an anticipated increased demand on already strained police resources without any significant benefit to the community. The zoning administrator denied this application, stating the project has proposed a full line of alcoholic beverages next to school would be too intense for the area. The finding that the project would not further degrade adjacent properties cannot be made, since the area, as evidence, is present with public drunkenness that has already proven to be dangerous to children. The chair of the Central Area Planning Commission adamantly opposed reversing the ZA's denial, stating, I think it's incredibly important for us to consider the LAPD and LAUSD's position opposing the alcohol request. We have to take into consideration the quality of life of residents adjacent to this property. I don't see any evidence, compelling evidence, to overrule the ZA's denial. The other commission members abused their discretion by reversing the ZA administrator without offering any substantial evidence whatsoever to counter the city's position that the full line of alcohol would create significant negative impacts upon our community. Instead, the other commission members spoke of potential economic benefits as a reason to reverse the ZA. The applicant claims that they have reduced the project scale and included on-site security and therefore mitigated potential impacts. Yet, they have presented nothing but personal opinion to counter their continued opposition by LAPD, LAUSD, and the ZA and our community that any alcohol sales at this location would have significant impact. The observation of the LAPD, the staff and parents of Kingsley Elementary, and myself and my neighbors is based upon actual knowledge and experience, and under CEQA personal observations constitute substantial evidence. I've got one more sentence. Our personal observation of alcohol consumptions are of increased prostitution and gang extortions. Vehicles recklessly speed through our narrow streets, cars blowing past stop signs and traffic lights, and other real dangers to both my community and the children of Kingsley Elementary. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and that was the appellant is the applicant here.
My name is Larry Mondragon, and I'm with Craig Fry and Associates representing the applicant respondent. But before I begin, may I address a point of procedure? We were here in December, and it was a rather unusual meeting because it didn't have a quorum. During that meeting, we had a number of people speak, and we had 50 letters of support submitted. However, there was an error in the online agenda, and those letters were not linked and don't appear in the agenda. So just wanted to make sure that for the record, the committee noted that.
Thank you. So noted.
I'd like to begin by saying that LAPD had issues with the project as presented, so did LAUSD. That project doesn't exist anymore. It was completely redesigned and reimagined. The project was very large and ambitious, admittedly to a fault, and the project was completely reinvented to eliminate proposed brew pub, banquet hall, off-site sales are no longer part of the project. All entertainment, live entertainment has been removed. The seating capacity has been reduced from 376 proposed to 230 seats. And during school hours, the capacity is limited to 150 seats. The operating hours have been restricted. Security has been enhanced by 2 on-site security guards. And moreover, we have volunteered and support a 3-year plan approval, which will ensure the applicant complies with the conditions of approval as well as will give the community an opportunity to be considered on its point of view. Because this project only involves the right to distribute, to sell and dispense alcoholic beverages in an existing facility, it qualifies fully for a categorical exemption under state guidelines number section 15301. It's been a long road to get to where we've been here today. An application for these rights was first submitted 3 years ago. The process has been daunting. It's been very many times frustrating, and at the end of the day, I can say, though, that system has worked the way it should. The neighborhood voices have been heard. They've resulted in substantial modifications to the proposed project. Did every concern get resolved? I can't say that they all did, but if they had, there would not be not only a restaurant, but very well not even a mixed-use building with 35 residential units. Did every element of the project as we wanted it be put into the proposal? No. This is vastly cut down, but it represents at the end of the day a reasonable compromise that balances the interests of the local stakeholders with the economic project that the applicant originally wanted to bring to fruition. For these reasons, we respectfully request that the appeal be denied and that the decision of the Area Planning Commission be upheld and the conditional use granted. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much. Okay, we have a member of the public on the queue, Doug Haynes. Mr. Haynes, if you could come forward, you have a minute.
Hello, my name's Doug Haynes. I've represented this area for the East Hollywood Neighborhood Council for 17 years, and I live a half block from the project site. I take exception to the comments by the ZA that somehow this checks all the boxes, and I also take exception to the comments that somehow a compromise has been made. LAUSD has not changed its position on this matter. This is 5 feet from Kingsgate Elementary School. LAPD has not changed its opposition to this project. We as a community have not changed our opposition to this project. Originally, this project came in as an MND many years ago with medical offices, no bars, no restaurants, nothing that would directly impact children, little 5, 6, 7, 8-year-olds that are right next to this mega project, as I call it. I ask that an M&D be redone on this matter so we can have a proper analysis of the impacts related to this project. And that's all we're asking for. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next, we have a representative from Council District 13. Please come forward.
Good evening, Plum Committee members. Ted Walker from Council District 13. I'll keep this very brief. Our office is in alignment with staff's recommendation on this item. Thank you.
Okay. Colleagues, are there comments or questions on this item? No comments or questions? Okay. Then I'm going to recommend that we deny the appeal and sustain the Central Area Planning Commission's determination to approve the environmental clearance, the categorical exemption from CEQA relative to the sale and dispensing of a full line of alcoholic beverage for on-site consumption in conjunction with the new 9,988 square foot ground floor restaurant cafe for the property located at 5243-5245 West Santa Monica Boulevard. Seeing no other comments on the queue, let's open the roll. Or call the roll, please.
Yes, Mr. Blumenfield.
Blumenfield, aye.
Ms. Hutt.
Aye.
Mr. Nassarian is absent, Mr. Lee's absent, and Ms. Rahman. Yes. That's 3 ayes, and that's approved.
Okay, thank you. And that clears the desk, and now we have general public comment. Is there anyone here that wishes to speak to general public comment? Going on items within the agenda, going once, going twice. General public comment is closed, and this meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.